By my calculation, there's approximately 30 minutes of questions still to run, allowing for a small amount of injury time. And the next question, Deputy Ward will ask for the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister, given that pay-as-you-go mobile phone users can pay up to 39 pence a minute when held in a queue for Social Security or indeed the COVID-19 helplines, will the Minister advise whether there is any facility for members of the public to make these calls for free? And if not, will the Minister commit to enabling this as a matter of urgency? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I can reassure the Deputy that all calls to customer and local services are answered very quickly. In fact, I've been trying it this morning and it doesn't even ring. On average, it's a few seconds, but I do understand what the Deputy is saying. Income support is the first option, so again, shouldn't wait too long. And if somebody is waiting more than 2 minutes, and I've tried this many times to wait that long and I can't, an automatic request for your number and a ring back will kick in. So I'm monitoring this, sir. Nothing's free in this world. I've been told every 444 number will cost approximately £40,000 each. So and we're looking at other options to get to, people to contact the department. But I am monitoring this, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, that's just to remind members there is no members can ask supplementary questions, but there won't be supplementaries to the supplementaries. Yes, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. The line is answered quickly, sir, but then you were put into a queue, and 2 minutes of that time is quite expensive for callers, particularly those on the lowest incomes. The notion that nothing is free, I understand, but when people are on pay-as-you-go, they are forced to pay extra. And seeing as we are holders in the Jersey Telecom, would it not be possible to set up a free phone line as part of the service, particularly as we're in the COVID emergency at the moment, sir? Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. I would say the Deputy could be a mind reader. I've had my DG literally speaking to telecoms this morning because we were quite astounded by the 39p per minute for a local from a mobile to a landline call, and they're being pretty receptive. So it's really being looked into. We want to do what we can. As I say, there's 6 options on the 4444 number, many for businesses, advertising jobs and everything. So it's got to be appreciated. And again, there's the COVID, pretty well answered early, but again, when the vaccinations went out, it did go up to about 5 minutes. It's not acceptable if people's on the pay-as-you-go. So we are working, we are talking to telecoms, and we're keeping all the options open. I hope that reassures the Deputy. That's a lot of money for somebody on a low-income pay-as-you-go phone. Thank you.
Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. Has the Minister reminded Jersey Telecom that they are a state-owned entity, therefore have a primary purpose, which is to serve the public?
I'm sure that I wasn't on the phone to telecoms this morning. This has come about by this question and the stating the amount of money. Yes, I know they put money back in, and if it's anybody who can help us provide something, it will be firstly telecoms, because of that the buy-in that we have to Jersey Telecoms. Again, that won't help people who don't have, because sometimes it's not the cheapest pay-as-you-go, they'll go to the other providers. So we need to make this fair, and we need to make the solution fit for the problem. Thank you.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Actually, picking up on that last element of the Minister's answer, whilst her Director General may be speaking to Jersey Telecom, I just want her to confirm that she's aware there are more than one mobile provider in the island, and therefore, if she wanted to actually reduce the costs, it's likely to be the case that she'll have to speak to all mobile providers in the island.
Well, I was answering the question from Senator Moore because of the stake we have in Jersey Telecoms. Absolutely, and I said there may be people go for the other providers because that they think it's cheaper. So it's the delivery, and the talks have just started, but we have been monitoring do we need a free phone line, and what would be on it? Would it just be income support? Would it be business, co-funded payroll? Would it be advertising jobs for the local market? So there's all things that we are monitoring, Deputy, and we are aware that now this has been brought to my attention of how much it is, how we can solve this problem. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, the beauty of having two screens, you click on the wrong one. Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to hear that the Minister is looking into this. I'm slightly disappointed that it wasn't aware of those charges, and I would ask her to really act on this as a matter of urgency, as it came from a constituent who made for that, and particularly during this time of COVID emergency. Perhaps we can ask the mobile phone providers to take away this charge. I think it'd be really beneficial. Thank you, sir.
I really can't add any more. I have gone just out of protest to pay as you go myself when my contracts run out, because, you know, just to check that I can actually monitor my spend, and I do know that it is more expensive. Again, it's making sure we get the, you know, we're looking at web chats, we're looking at what can be done. Obviously, again, that wouldn't be ideal for pay-as-you-go phone users, but it's being looked at, and I'll keep the Deputy up to date on that. Thank you.
Very much, Minister. We come to question 13. Deputy Alves will ask of the same Minister. Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise why taxpayers on the marginal rate tax are paying 1.9% of their taxable income for long-term care, whereas those on the standard tax rate are charged only 1.5% on their taxable income? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Income tax and long-term care contributions are worked out in a similar way, using a marginal rate of tax that is higher than the standard rate of tax. But I'd like to reassure the Deputy that nobody is paying more than 1.5% of their total income for long-term care contributions. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you. I understand that nobody is paying more than 1.5% of their total income. However, those on the marginal rates, after thresholds are applied and allowances are applied, are being charged 1.95% of their income. Can the Minister explain why this is?
Because, oh, sorry, sir.
All right, you're still there.
Yeah, I'm echoing here. Am I echoing there?
Not particularly, no.
Okay. Yes, well, the rate of long-term care is 1.5, and because the marginal rate is always less than the standard rate, sorry, more, it's more than the standard rate is 26%, the standard rate is 20%, it still works out that they pay no more than 1.5 on their total income. Yes, obviously their total income is reduced because of allowances, but working it out, I've got some examples here which I will send to the Deputy. I know we're short of time and they're quite long to explain, but I can send them to the Deputy, and if then she's still got questions, because we thought this would be a written question, she can come back to me. Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thanks. So unless I've misunderstood it, it sounds like there are different definitions of what's considered taxable income depending on what the tax is. So, so my question to the Social Security Minister is that true? And if it is true, why?
Well, there's always been this debate, is long-term care a tax? But it comes out, it's done with the tax, and I've asked Friday, I checked again yesterday, that I am right in saying that nobody pays more than 1.5, which is what I agreed in the Assembly last year in the government plan, sorry, the year before. I did want 2%, it was amended by Senator Moore's scrutiny panel, that nobody pays 1.5 of their total income. And that's because of the difference in the marginal rate and the standard rate. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister appreciate that there is obviously some confusion here, and that the fact that there are two different ways to work out income tax doesn't help? Will the Minister endeavour to appropriately communicate why it is and make it understandable to the public of why it is exactly that those on marginal rates are charged that 1.95% after thresholds and allowances are taken into account, as that is currently what is on the gov.je website as well. Thank you, sir.
I will try, and I'll send the examples around to the deputy, and then if she's got any more questions, we can have probably a Teams meeting. I need to get this across that they are not paying. I've got the example here, and I know I might go over my 1 minute 30 seconds if I go into it, as I say, but I will do that and try and get it across to everybody that they're not paying. In fact, this person is paying marginal, but the total of the income is 1.47 and not even 1.5. Not a lot of difference, I know. Thank you.
We come to question 14 that Deputy Pamplin will ask the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy Pamplin.
Thank you, sir. What has been the response from islanders to date to the letters inviting them to take part in the Assisted Dying Citizens Jury and its establishment being on track to meet the timetable for delivery? Thank you.
Sir, as of the 18th of January, 413 people had registered their interest in the Citizens' Jury. This is a response rate of 9% of the 4,600 invitations sent, which is sufficient to select a demographically representative jury consisting of 18 to 24 members. And the closing date for registration is Monday, the 25th of January, and the process is on track to meet the delivery timetable.
Supplementary, Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. Some of the feedback I've received, and I don't know if the Minister has received this, is the dates of the sessions put forward for the jury to meet on Thursdays and Saturdays. Has he also heard of any feedback from islanders where that timetable may alienate people of taking part because they really would want to, but cannot be available on those set days? Thank you, sir.
No, I've not had that feedback, sir. If the Deputy would wish to share it with me. It is correct, we have proposed Thursdays and Saturdays. I imagine people will have commitments that may prevent them from attending on any number of days. So it is difficult with invites sent out to 4,600 people. But if there's a genuine difficulty here, perhaps the Deputy would share with me what he feels is a problem.
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Have any reminders been sent out to those people who received these invites? As I've heard from some who weren't entirely sure what it was about and have probably now forgotten to respond. So have any reminders been sent out? Thank you.
No, we've not sent reminders. The letters were sent out earlier this month. It seems to me if people are interested, there is still time to reply before the closing date of next Monday. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Pamplin.
Yes, thank you, sir. Also part of the process is the putting together of the panel who will go somewhere in selecting and being part of the process of jury members. Does the Minister have an update of those members and when they will be publicised? Thank you.
So the selection of the panel is being undertaken by Sortition Foundation, who have expertise in selecting a representative group that is truly demographically representative of the island. And as to any further publicity will be worked out with jury members and the Sortition Foundation and the independent advisory panel, which is overseeing planning for this piece of work, sir. Thank you.
Much indeed, Minister. We come to question 15 that Senator Mezek will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Senator.
Thank you, sir. Since the relocation of government offices from Cyril and Marcon House to Broad Street in 2018, as part of a wider office strategy to free up government-owned sites for affordable housing, will the Minister advise how many government-owned sites have been officially identified for this purpose?
Sir, the Chief Minister will be taking this one, sir.
Yes, Chief Minister.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I just want to challenge the initial assumption of the question, actually, before actually trying to give the sense of the answer he needs. The reason for actually doing the offer strategy is that if we do nothing, it, broadly speaking, being really simplistic about this, will cost us £30 million more than doing anything along the lines that we are proposing. So essentially, if we prevaricate, if we delay, if we don't do anything, there is a cost. If we don't do anything, the net discounted net economic cost is £30 million less than the do nothing option. That's around the principles of any scheme. And also, sir, it generates around £7 million a year savings if we do something. But sir, in terms of housing, housing sites or sites that can be released, let's be clear, the principles would be that we'd go from 21 buildings down to 6. That's about 18,000 square metres that can be released, and therefore, so that would identify the sites potentially for new housing that could be identified. It is also worth making the point, sir, importantly, that in the pipeline at the moment, sir, Andium are working on around 2,000 additional homes by 2025. There's some numbers around that, but time doesn't allow me to expand too much. But also the waterfront is expected to deliver over about 1,000 new units, and that's sort of 2025 to 2035. And equally, Ports of Jersey schemes may also deliver 500 to 1,000. There's some other numbers around it, but there are things in the pipeline, sir, for affordable housing, as well as the benefits generated by the release of sites, if we can get to the offer strategy, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Yes, please. My question was asking for specifically which sites or how many sites have been officially identified for this purpose, not potentially, not theoretically, which ones specifically have, because we know that there are already sites which are lying empty or unused or underused when there's a desperate need for affordable homes. Andium, as he mentioned, are desperate to acquire sites so that they can get building. How many sites since the move to Broad Street have been officially identified for the purpose where beforehand they were not?
So there's two issues that come out of that. One is obviously what you define as affordable housing, sir, and the other point being, sir, specifically identified is predicated on a scheme having been signed off, because that then starts releasing. And so, as I've said, in terms of numbers, it's 21 buildings being reduced to 6. Therefore, that would be around 15 buildings, which I've translated into that sort of number of sites, but it is around 18,000 square metres that would be released. That's obviously construction side, sir. Whilst the centre, like me, is very concerned about the pipeline and the provision of housing, I do make the point, sir, that Andium also are moving on and delivering houses. 400 have been delivered to date, and I believe 700 are also under construction or have planning permission. Their aim, sir, is to deliver 2,000 homes by 2025. So there are units in the pipeline, sir, but in terms of the specific ability to release, to identify sites today, as a result of the release of the offer strategy, I can't at this stage, sir, because actually I need it signed off first, sir.
Well, we come to question 16 that Deputy Morell will ask the Chief Minister. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And just before starting, just to mention, I appreciate some elements of this question have been answered in previous questions. In light of the incorporation of Statistics Jersey into strategic policy performance and planning, will the Chief Minister explain what further measures, if any, are planned in respect to the status of Statistics Jersey, and will he state why the Chief Statistician has been placed on gardening leave?
Chief Minister.
Sorry, sir, just unmuting. Yes, as the Deputy has said, the question has been partially answered, I hope, already. I reiterate, being, I hope, absolutely clear, as I've emailed to members, As far as I'm concerned, the independence of Statistics Jersey is fully assured. I'm committed to ensuring that not only remains the case, but is further strengthened when necessary. And as I've also said, there's been no change to the statutory independence or status of Statistics Jersey, who've been part of the wider development for SB3 since government departments were recognised in 2018. And obviously before that, Sir, Statistics Jersey were part of the Chief Minister's Department, and I understand their accounting officer was the Chief Executive Officer. I've confirmed my support to SAGA in October 20. I understand policy officers have subsequently been in touch, and also, sir, as the deputy will be aware, and I hope that's an appropriate time to mention it, I've also asked that he take this on and expedite matters, but I hope we'll get that resolved during the course of this week, because that's a discussion that's going on. But just say, I hope that demonstrates my commitment to make sure this is expedited and this is done in a, in a strong way. As I've said previously, I don't really want to comment further. I'm not at liberty always to comment further on employment matters. But again, I've got the highest regard for the Chief Statistician, who's leaving after nearly 20 years of dedicated public service to pursue other endeavours. And I very much wish him well, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy?
Yes, thank you, sir. With regard to the dual role of the new Chief Statistician as being the Chief Statistician and also Head of Analytics in SPPP, does the Chief Minister consider in that dual role, and because of the reporting lines via SPPP to the Chief Executive, does the Minister see there the potential for a conflict of interest or for undue influence being placed upon the new Chief Statistician? Thanks, sir.
Sorry, sir, I'm just unmuting again and try to make sure I stay within a minute and a half this time, sir. Sir, in terms of the reporting lines, sir, let's be really clear, no one can tell the Chief Statistician what to do. Chief Statistician remains part of Statistics Jersey and remains covered by the law. What we do have to consider, and I'm sure that will be part of the considerations of the Deputy, is that there needs to be some form of line of oversight in some shape or form, and this is a recommendation, so I'm looking down at the recommendations of the Controller Auditor General in relation to any arm's length organisation, which may be a way to go for independence. There are some issues around that, but there is a responsibility to ensure that proper governance is taking place within that organisation. So there is still got to be some form of reporting line that comes up within the organisation. That doesn't mean influence, that does mean essentially governance, sir. But let's be really clear, and we've had an exchange of emails, sir. Hopefully the Deputy's understood that my position. I want to see the independence of the Stats Department enhanced if it needs to be, but if there are anything matters that need to be resolved, for that to be resolved. I've given my guarantee on that earlier, and that's my position, sir, and that actually has always been the case.
Very much. Senator Valois.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the Chief Minister whether he believes it's acceptable that no announcement was made of the changes with regards to the Chief Statistician, and the fact that we're required to meet international standards, and therefore the current law in place in terms of the strengthening that he refers to is actually just making it independent. The fact that we haven't actually made it completely independent through the legislation in which we currently have. Thank you, sir.
So there are two remarks. One is obviously the legislation was only brought in 2018. And I rather assumed, I think we probably all assumed that they'd achieved what they needed to achieve by that law. Evidently, there's been one or two issues that have come out of that. I think just in relation to the first part of the question, sir, the Centre may have missed my point earlier. The existing Chief Statistician does not formally leave until the 20th of January. I'd always understood that he had asked if his departure could be very low key and without any fuss, and therefore we were respecting his wish for privacy, which seemed to be the least we could do after 20 years of dedicated public service. We had planned to make an announcement following his departure. As I said, last official day was tomorrow, in accordance with his wishes, sir. I did make the point that rather felt like a moot point at this stage.
Deputy Pamplin.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister have a feeling, like I do, that there is an opportunity by NIST? He's just stated 20 years of experience of a grown, known Jerseyman who's been essential to this role is not having any say in the succession of this. Does that not concern the Chief Minister as it does me and many other islanders? Thank you.
So it's my understanding that he has helped to design the new structure. So from that perspective, he has had some input, as I understand matters, into the structuring, and was, I think, very supportive of the principles that it meant that someone from within the department could then continue a career and progression, and was promoted up to the next level, sir. So I think that is the principle of growing our own, and that's something we were all very, very keen on. In terms of somebody who departs the organisation having input into their successor, sir, I think from memory, I'm sure it's a process that doesn't normally happen, sir, and I think from memory it's not encouraged under the normal HR employment kind of conditions that we follow, sir.
Very much. Final supplementary, Deputy Morell.
Thank you,
No.
sir. No,
Yeah.
I was going to say difficulty finding the mute button. No, that's fine for me, sir. Thank you.
Very much. We come to question 17. The Deputy Gardner will ask the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Given that the e-petition calling for additional support to small businesses has received over 1,000 signatures, will the Minister advise what plans he has, if any, to offer one-off grants to those that have been worst affected by forced closures?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. A grant scheme is currently under development, but it would be likely to be a monthly rather than a one-off payment, and would aim to help cover the fixed costs of the most severely affected businesses. The proposal will be taken forward to ministers for approval this week, sir, and I anticipate details to be announced as soon as possible. The new scheme, sir, will sit alongside an enhanced payroll scheme that will be easier to access and provide increased support for a range of businesses, sir, especially those most impacted by enforced closures. We continue to adapt our business support measures in response to the prevailing conditions. And since the start of the pandemic, the states will have spent significant sums to support businesses and to retain and protect islanders' jobs, sir. For example, just for members' information, to date, £103 million has been spent on the co-funded payroll support scheme, sir, an additional £3.1 million through the business loan guarantee scheme. Visitor accommodation support schemes and events and attraction support schemes are now in place. There's been an additional £6 million in income support, together with deferrals of GST and employer and social security payments. And I want to reiterate, sir, that the team are working literally around the clock to bring more support to businesses as soon as possible, sir, subject, of course, to the relevant ministerial approvals.
Supplemental, Deputy?
Yes, please. I'm grateful for the Minister, and it's really reassuring that the plans are in place. And I do agree that the payroll scheme that was put in place give a welcome relief. I would like to follow up, as deferral and debts are mounting, would the Minister also consider reducing employer social security contribution in line with already implemented employee reductions?
Thank you. I can confirm that is one of the options being explored by the team, and would of course be subject to ministerial approval if approved, sir. But that's something I would certainly support, because I think it's important. Although the deferrals are helpful, sir, it is only pushing debt down the road for businesses, and I would be very pleased to support something that would help alleviate that burden, sir, for the future. Thank you.
I'm afraid that brings the time allocated for questions to an end, and therefore we move on to the 3 periods of 15 minutes. The first period of 15 minutes is for the Minister for Children and Housing, and Deputy Higgins, you have a question.
Thank you, sir. Given the impacts of COVID-19 and the acute shortage of housing, especially for low-paid and vulnerable members of society, will the Minister advise what actions, if any, are being taken to prevent islanders being evicted from their homes during the pandemic, whether due to the actions of creditors or landlords? And will he further state whether the use of hotels or sofa surfing are considered viable policy alternatives to the prevention of eviction?
Thank you, sir. At present, no additional action is being taken to prevent evictions. The government introduced emergency COVID-19 legislation about tenancies in April 2020 that in part enacted a temporary ban on evictions for rent arrears, and this is the key point, directly linked to a reduction in income caused by COVID-19. That is to say that evictions could still occur. The court's direction is still in place, sir. There is a rigorous process that landlords have to go through before the court would entertain or accept an eviction at this time. As for the second part of the Deputy's question, sofa surfing and the use of hotels are not considered to be policy alternatives to preventing evictions. However, an officer may suggest this as an alternative to resolve emergency housing situations. These would only ever be for a short-term measure. When cases involve children, for instance, recommendations to reside in a hotel or with a family member may be suggested over homelessness. I would also point out that in a case where children are involved, if there is a case of homelessness, the officers are aware of that. They have a statutory duty to report that to Child Services as a safeguarding concern. Thank you, sir.
Please, supplementary.
Yes, Deputy.
Yes. First of all, I'm astonished by the last remark by the Minister, which I think is unacceptable. Is he aware of how many families are facing eviction at this time? I'm aware of 4. I've been sent an email just in this lunchtime giving me an indication of another 5. The first is going to court tomorrow. Others are at the end of the month, and probably others in the first 2 weeks. What is the Minister going to do about this scandal, putting people out on the streets when there's a pandemic and there aren't sufficient housing?
Thank you, sir. The emergency unit, which was put in place early in the pandemic, housed over 200 people during that time, and the officer work continues should there be that situation. I am aware that there are evictions lodged with the court. However, in those the stats that I have, sir, demonstrate that very few of them have been granted, and many of them have been adjourned because, again, that threshold that I talked about landlords having exhausted all other measures being put in place, haven't been met yet, sir.
Conor Thompson-Tellier. Conor Thompson-Tellier.
Thank you, sir. Sorry. Is the Minister aware of the recent refusal of planning permission for the Andium development on the Jersey Gasworks site with 122 units of affordable housing on the grounds of Neolithic burial remains far underground? And what steps does he propose to take to try to keep this development moving forward? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Am I aware of the refusal? Yes, I've seen the media headlines. Have I had an opportunity to read the report from the planning committee to explain their reasons for refusal? I would imagine they might be much more nuanced and delicate than necessarily have made their way into the media. No, I have not had that opportunity. Do I continue to support this scheme and other schemes for affordable housing within the island? Yes, of course I do.
Supplementary, please, sir. Will the Minister not agree with me that this scheme is quite unique in terms of urban regeneration, because it doesn't just provide housing for islanders, but it provides open space, it adds 50% to the size of the town park, and it also provides 150 public car parking spaces. And if he hasn't done already, will he contact Andium to see what support he as Minister can give them?
So yes, I haven't had the opportunity to contact Andium yet. Yes, of course I will do. Am I aware that the particular proposal by Andium did reduce from an already granted planning permission the amount of housing units for affordable housing and open space, which is desperately needed within the north of town? Yes, I am, and I think I might have missed another point of the constable's question.
Well, I think that has to do with it. However, Senator Valwa.
Thank you, sir. The constable's, to a certain extent, taken away my question, but I'd like to ask the Minister, on the basis of the issues with regards to the planning application for the north of town, whether or what his views are as Minister for Children as to the north of town St Helier Youth Centre, bearing in mind many discussions have been had around this, whether that would be an appropriate site considering the position we find ourselves in.
I thank the Senator for her question. As I said when I went from the Ministership of Children and Housing, that I supported the scheme for a youth centre within the north of St Helier for all the very good reasons we're aware of. Whether it's part of this scheme or not, I believe the previous housing minister did try to incorporate that into the Andium scheme. Of course, I'm more than happy to reapproach them now that these particular plans have been rejected to look at that issue again.
Supplementary,
Supplementary, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
If I may, if the planning application's been turned down and there is no other way for Andium Homes to go ahead with regards to the building that's expected, would the Minister pursue having a north of town youth centre in that part of town, particularly over the current gas container, to ensure appropriation for all the young individuals that are required to have the youth service provision that they have in our town areas?
Whilst I would be keen to pursue that, I would need to check what the issues around property transfer were, and it might start falling within the realms of property holdings in the infrastructure department. But I am committed to that particular project and wanting to see it to fruition.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Given the two previous contributions, I will go into another area of questioning, but I'm pleased to see there's a commitment made to the North of Town Youth Centre. So can I ask the Minister, given that the CREA that was referred to and with the return to schools did not include consideration of the new variant or any new variants of the virus being present, does the Minister still feel that it is safe to return to schools and safe to have the processes that are going on in terms of lack of distancing, and that we don't risk an outbreak of the new variant that has come from transmission through schools? Thank you, sir.
So do I consider that schools on balance of risk remain a safe place to be? Yes, that is the medical advice that we have been.
So that wasn't my question.
If I may be able to finish. I do believe that they are. I believe the medical. I have sought further advice from STAC to examine the position of any particular variant. Some of the initial advice coming back is the department is already behaving as if it was then factoring its plans.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for that answer. Can the Minister elaborate on what it means that they are already changing their behaviour to deal with the new variant, given that there is growing evidence of the increased transmissibility of it, and particularly transmissibility between young people? There's definitely evidence in the UK of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. That information has already been disseminated, I believe, to head teachers and through the work of our facilities management, and I'm more than happy to pass that on to the deputy so that he has that information.
Yes, Senator Mesek.
Thank you, sir. Since taking office, has the Minister had an opportunity to meet with all of the social housing providers in the island, and in any conversations with those, has he discussed with them access to future sites to build affordable housing that are currently in government ownership?
Thank you, sir. I have had an opportunity to meet with Andium as an introductory session. I think I've got other social housing providers pending for an initial meeting next week, and I will take the opportunity to raise the question that the Senator raises.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
In advance of that, and given the answer to the question that the Chief Minister provided me with, that since the move the government officers to Broad Street, in fact, no sites have officially been handed over for affordable housing, would he endeavour to press this issue before that meeting with those social housing providers, so that they can have great assurance that their minister will be fighting to support them to deliver more housing that we so desperately need?
I agree with the Senator that the island requires housing, and that's across a range of tenures, not only in the social rented sector, first-time buyers, open property market, and I will endeavour to proceed as he requests. However, as I'm sure you can perfectly understand, I'm quite pressed for time, juggling quite a few balls at the moment, but I will endeavour to do that.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And actually, just going back to the north of town, to the gas work site, would the Minister advise the Assembly as to whether he's aware that Andium Homes do still have approval for flats on the gas work site, and any decision of the Planning Committee last week did not affect that approval, which remains intact?
I thank the Deputy for his question. I wasn't aware of that nuance, and that was particularly why I was very careful not to comment on the Planning Committee's decision without having seen the full report, because I appreciate that as I sat on the Planning Committee for 12 years, there's often a lot of considerations which don't necessarily always make their way into the media.
Thank you. And as a supplementary, sir, is the Minister also aware that Planning Committee members were very keenly understanding of the need for housing, but did feel that the destruction of a Grade 1 listed place for the sake of car parking was the main reason why the second application, which does not affect the first live and approved application, was rejected?
Sir, I am absolutely aware that members of the Planning Committee take their role very seriously. They are well aware of the issues affecting islanders, but I'm also aware that when the members sit on Planning Committee, they are acting in a quasi-judicial role and have to act within the policies of the island plan, and therefore they cannot make a political decision and go ahead with it. They have to be able to justify the policies, and I thank the Deputy for pointing out some of the considerations that the committee went through.
Possibly Deputy Sutton? Deputy Sutton?
Thank you, sir. Yes, given that the site proposed by Andium, previously referred to, was a second attempt where much more green space and much less dense accommodation was to be provided, will the Minister seek to persuade Andium not to return to its first attempt, which contained much more high density of housing and no green space? And will he do his best to attempt to avoid that outcome?
Thank you, sir. I think it's clear that I need to have, following the decision of the Planning Committee, I need to have a meeting with Andium to discuss them what way forward there is on this site, and I note the Deputy's points and will take them with me.
Well, that brings the period for questions to the Minister for Children and Housing to an end. We now have questions of 15 minutes for the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. The first question is from the Connétable of St Martin. Connétable?
Thank you, sir. Sorry, I just couldn't unmute. Could the Minister for Economic Development please outline what consultation he and respective officers have undertaken with the residents who neighbour sites intended for the production of medicinal cannabis owned or operated by firms recently awarded licences for its commercial cultivation, as well as consultation with the Constable and Conservation Trusts of those respective parishes, and whether he intends to make the consultation process, if there was one, public to justify the awarding of these licences. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. The roles in relation to the development of the cannabis industry are split between economic development and the health department. The Minister for Health is the licensing authority, and the licenses are agreed and issued through that department. There has been a lot of consultation with neighbours of these sites, but not so much consultation from my department at economic development. But I understand through the planning process in certain areas and with the owners of the premises and the businesses and the neighbours themselves there. With the exception of 1 or 2 cases, I'm not aware of any significant problems in that area. And of course, the licence application process will want to ensure the minimum impact on neighbouring properties to where across the island medicinal cannabis might be cultivated and produced. It is certainly a gentle form of agriculture, and of course, in terms of growing specialist crops, so the majority of that will be carried out internally under glass in specially built in environments. Thank you.
Supplemental, Conitap? Supplemental, Conitap?
Sorry. Yes. Does the, as far as I'm aware, there's been very little consultation with neighbours or parishioners. There's been absolutely no consultation with the constable. I'm aware that there was some consultation taken place last week where they assured some of my parishioners that the male constable of the parish was fully behind the erection of these of this business carrying on, and then the parishioners had to say that actually I'm a female constable, so obviously that was a mistruth. As far as I'm aware, there's been no I'm sorry,
Conitap, this really does have to be.
Well, I just want to ask, I've got so many questions, but I would just like to ask the Economic Development Minister whether he considers having 9-foot fences, security fences, on 2 sides of one of our small parish roads, inconsequential. It's going to look like some sort of area of a prison area, and I don't believe there's been enough consultation, and I don't think there's been any environmental assessments. So does he agree that having 9-foot security fences is will blend in with the countryside?
So I'm not sure I know what or where the constable is referring. I presume she's referring to something in her parish, but I have no knowledge of any developments. And in relation to fencing, that is a planning issue on the surface of it. Nobody wants barbed wire 9-foot fences reminiscent of the German occupation, but of course, in reality, in certain circumstances, the fences and the protection of these facilities will have to and should absolutely blend in with the environment as much as possible. But these are planning issues, and these have to be resolved through the planning process. But I would like to invite the constable to meet with me and my team. If she's got a number of questions, let's sit down together and see if we can address them and provide as much help as we can. Thank you.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask Minister what preparations or plans Minister put in place to create Jersey as a safe destination to travel during the coming summer.
Thank you. That's very much a work in process with Visit Jersey. Visit Jersey have worked hard in recent months to change the angle of their marketing, should we say, in light of the COVID and to deal with the ramifications of COVID-19, and are very much promoting Jersey along those lines. Of course, it is challenging because we're not through this yet. Of course, we've had a very the world's had a very difficult second spike, and of course we're just touching wood, seeing that seem to be coming through that now very well in Jersey. But of course, our tourism sector doesn't just depend on how well we do here. Before we start releasing or shall we say relaxing our border regime, we're very much dependent on the situation, on the prevailing conditions in the countries from where our visitors come, namely the UK and neighbouring European countries. But I can assure the Deputy and members that visit Jersey are very advanced, they're very switched on to the challenges and are responding accordingly with some first-class marketing. And I would invite members to visit the Visit Jersey website and their social media pages to see exactly how they're dealing with this. Thank you.
Supplementary, please.
Yes, certainly, Deputy.
There is a chance that UK and mainland Europe will not be out of the woods by this summer. Does Minister consider to engage with small jurisdiction with none or low cases and airlines as well to create a travel corridors to enable islanders to travel and to boost our hospitality industry outside of usual standard connections that we have now?
Yes, I think that's an excellent idea, and I see some not just necessary, I think it will be essential for us to do that as we move into the summer. We want to try and attract visitors to Jersey, but only if it's safe to do so. And I think there, when we look to our neighbouring Channel Islands and the other Crown dependencies and perhaps some other regions that have very low levels of COVID-19, there are certainly opportunities to do that. And of course, we're also seeing vaccination programs ramping up in many of our countries. So I very much hope that we will start being able to safely see a return to our visitor, for our visitors, probably towards the middle to the end of the summer. But as the Deputy said, very much depends on what happens around us. And I do not wish to compromise the progress we've been making.
Well, Conatable St Brelade.
Thank you, sir. We learned from the national press on Saturday that UK courts have told insurers to pay claims for business interruption over COVID. Would the Minister confirm to members whether or not he's had interaction with insurers to give support with any claim they may have had locally? Thank you, sir.
I haven't personally, sir, but I understand some work has been going on with officers. I also understand that some businesses have received support from insurance they've had, but many have not, sir. I haven't got much more of an update at this stage, sir, but it is a work in progress, and we shall keep our ear very much to the ground on it, and happy to update the Constable when we get more information.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, Conatable.
Are insurance payments taken into account when making COVID support grants? Thank you, sir.
I believe they are, sir, in certain circumstances, but I would have to double check on the detail.
Well, Conatable St Helier.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister share my concerns over the loss of yet more hotels in the island? Does he feel we're going to have enough beds for tourists as the recovery that we are all hoping for takes place and people choose Jersey as a safe and exciting destination? What strategies does he have for replacing some of the lost beds in terms of new hotels? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Of course, members will know that we have seen significant loss in beds in the last 20 years, especially, but partially because visitor expectations and have been changing as times have gone on, sir. And of course, one of the most, I think, important changes for the tourism sector was the removal of the prime site policy from a previous island plan. That removed the necessity for hotels to stay in the industry and allowed those who wanted to leave. And actually that led to a significant amount of new investment in new hotels. We all know we've seen a number of new hotels, and there are a number of new modern hotels wanting to start up. So, and I think that's very much the future. Of course, it's a great shame to look at some of the hotels that served us very well in previous decades leave the industry, but in truth, many of them, at their own admission, sir, are a product now that visitors would prefer something different. And actually, of course, we all know that the highest value for land use in Jersey is that for housing. So we're losing some of these hotels to housing, sir, especially those in the centre of town. Visitors tend to want views and beachside accommodation. Just moving on to the reduction in bed numbers, even with the announcement that we're losing some hotels, we're still going to be in the region of about 9,000 bed numbers, and there is capacity at certain times of the year. And to make the industry more productive, we want to fill up those beds well into the shoulder months. So I still think with the loss of beds, we will still have a very successful and more productive.
Senator, I had to ask you to bring your answer to a close, I'm afraid.
A supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, certainly, Conrad.
The Minister will be aware that a hotel like the Mayfair, with such a long and proud tradition of serving the island's tourists, is now earmarked for development. Would he agree with me that we don't simply have to accept that every hotel that closes is converted into housing? Would he consider looking at how owners of such buildings could be persuaded to have them redeveloped as new hotels?
Well, so I agree. The Mayfair is a very long established hotel, 507 beds, 222 rooms. That is a significant loss in numbers. But I would be reluctant to force owners of properties to be told what to do with their properties as such. Running a hotel can be a very profitable business, but of course, with the very high values of land, I think it takes some doing to persuade hotel owners to stay in that industry when their property is potentially worth so much money. In addition, any significant investment in a new hotel, so with the exception of some brands such as Premier Inn, would be likely to be more steered towards perhaps a more scenic or quieter location, so perhaps on the outskirts of town, on the coast. So whilst we are seeing some hotels going, sir, I feel confident that in the years ahead we will see a number of new hotels being developed, sir, which will be more, shall we say, sustainable for the future of tourism.
Thank you, sir. In the most recent report from the Jersey Gambling Commission, the chairman notes that the memorandum of understanding proposed by the Commission has remained unsigned for another year. Can the Minister inform the Assembly whether the MOU has now been signed, and could he explain why it has taken such an inordinate amount of time to do so? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have to say that whilst we have a very good relationship with the Gambling Commission, sir, and they're doing a very good job, their MOU, which is a request from them, is not top of my priority list at the moment. That doesn't mean to say it's not important, sir. Clearly, had we not had to deal with COVID, I think that would have been signed last year. I'm hoping to look at that with the Assistant Ministers at some stage in the early part of this year, sir, and we will deal with it in due course. So I would say that it is a memorandum of understanding, and as I understand it, it's not holding up any of the good work that the Commission are doing. Thank you.
That in effect brings the period of questions for this Minister to an end. The final 15-minute period is for the Chief Minister, and the first person who has listed a question is the Connétable St Saviour. Connétable.
Thank you, sir.
As it's been nearly a year now, does the Chief Minister think that he did the right thing by locking us down, unlike Guernsey? And if so, could you tell me what the benefits were for us islanders in the last 11 months? Thank you.
Chief Minister.
Sir, yeah, I think it's the other way around, sir. We haven't particularly locked the island down in the terms, i.e. closed the borders. We have obviously had two, we've got a hospitality circuit break, which is presently in hand, sir, and obviously which, and then that was extended as of Christmas Eve. And obviously we had the measures that we put in place in March, sir. But we haven't locked the island down, and I think the point I've said previously is that we are an open community. We have about 25,000 people, or did have, who are from mainland Europe, and therefore we felt from the overall views of the community that the strategy we've taken has been beneficial, sir. Unfortunately, sir, the only way we'll actually be able to assess the final outcomes, and it's not a competition this, I think it's going to be in 2-3 years after we come out of this, sir, when we'll know what the long-term effects are from both mental health and the economic side, as well as the direct impacts of COVID, sir.
Could I have a supplementary, please, sir?
Yes, you could, Gunnar.
I didn't say, I said that we've been in lockdown, unlike Guernsey. Sorry, we weren't locked down, unlike Guernsey, who was in lockdown. But I want to know what the benefits were to us islanders, because at this moment in time, myself and a lot of my parishioners are finding it very hard to find out what the benefit was for allowing the borders to stay open and to import. So please, could you just tell me what the benefits are to the island? Because in 3 years' time, I mightn't be here at my age. Thank you.
Sir, it was about allowing us to have as many of all of the freedoms that we do enjoy as possible, sir. And within all that was is the fact that Jersey, and sorry, to continue as much with as much normality as we've been able to, sir. But that does include the connectivity that we have outside the island, and about allowing the services that we do use that are external, and that includes allowing relatively, not perfect, a relatively easier travel for students, for families with connections to the United Kingdom, with people who suffer bereavements, all those type of areas, and that's just naming but a few, to make those connections, whereas previously, well, sorry, under a 14-day isolation period, which, as I understand it, is what Guernsey are operating, it would have been a lot harder, sir. But as I said, each jurisdiction, so Guernsey is different, and they have followed what they consider to be appropriate for themselves, sir.
It's been great.
There we are. Deputy Higgins. We appear to have we? Deputy Higgins.
Sorry, sir, I didn't unmute. Does the Chief Minister think it's acceptable for people to be evicted during the pandemic due to the shortage of public and private sector accommodation? And will he consider a moratorium similar to those in England, and even that proposed by President-elect Biden?
Sir, as I think we've said previously, I know there's a particular case that Deputy Higgins is working on. I'm certainly of the view that the courts, if it was an eviction, sir, do take, particularly in present times, do take a very much softer approach, I think that's the right expression, than might ordinarily be the case. And so it's difficult to comment because sometimes it very much depends on the circumstances and how much notice has been given and all those type of areas. But equally, we do need to recognise the difficulties that some families are facing. And if it's so it does depend on the circumstances within each case, sir. But we did put measures in place in March and April time, which have obviously subsequently expired. The question is, which is obviously one for the Housing Minister as well, sir, is it the right time, and are they needed to bring back when one takes the community as a whole, sir, into account versus perhaps individual cases?
Thank you, sir. Supplementary?
Yes.
Could I ask the Chief Minister again, And I don't like the idea of families having to be put into hotels or so forth. But if they are having to be put into hotels, will he ask his Social Security Minister to try and supplement their income? Because many of the people who are being evicted are the poorest in this island or the lowest paid in this island. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I was pausing about people having to be put into hotels, sir. So I'm very happy to have a discussion with the Social Security Minister to determine if there are any gaps in what we are providing at the moment which are COVID related, sir.
Well, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Our Chief Executive stood out more than 2 months ago. Would the Chief Minister advise if his departure date has been estimated or assumed or finalized? And if yes, what date has been estimated or assumed or established?
Sir, I'm very cautious around, as I said, dealing with HR issues and employment matters, sir. But we have previously indicated that we want to make sure there's an appropriate handover period between any incoming interim position and the outgoing Chief Executive. At the moment, sir, that is not envisaged to be any later than the end of March, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, indeed.
Chief Minister, it is a common practice it is a common practice for a deputy to be in place in case of emergency. What succession planning was put in order to deputize for the Chief Executive and to allow transition to be managed without interim Chief Executive whilst the new appointment will be made?
Apologies, sir. The deputy broke up, certainly on my laptop, in the last 10 seconds of that question, sir.
I will recap. There is a common practice for a deputy to be put in place in case of emergency for the Chief Executive. What succession planning was put in place to deputize for the Chief Executive to allow transition to be managed without interim Chief Executives once the new permanent appointment will be made?
So we did consider, again, I'm cautious around getting to HR matters here, sir. Estates Employment Board did consider, this is from recollection, did consider this, sir, and the view was that we would, the better approach, sir, given the matters facing the organisation and particularly in the middle of the COVID pandemic as well, sir, was to bring in an interim, sir.
Well, Deputy Dublet.
Sir, it wasn't about, I'm sorry that I'm interrupting, it wasn't about specific HR. It was a general question if the CEO has a deputy and if it could be deputized.
Well, I'm sorry, Deputy, I understand, but we really must move on, otherwise we'll run out of time and there are other people who are looking to ask questions. Deputy Dublet.
Thank you, sir. I ask a question that cuts across several different departments, therefore it's for the Chief Minister. And can the Chief Minister recognise the importance of education that takes place before school age, such as toddler classes, and also education that takes place in after-school clubs such as swimming, music and dance lessons, and outline how he will ensure that these educational activities can take place in their appropriate venues, please?
Sir, I also accept that we are, I understand exactly the question that the Deputy is asking, and there is no easy answer on this. We are continuously balancing the issues around trying to keep the freedoms that we can enjoy, sir, whilst limiting the spread. And that's why the premise was to go for obviously full-time education. The issues around dance classes, sir, and swimming, the problem we have, and we see it all the time, is as soon as one makes one exception, we then get more and more exceptions being asked for, and therefore the principle of trying to suppress the virus, as we're going at the moment, then gets significantly weakened. So whilst the Deputy is being eminently logical and very sensible in her question, I don't have an easy answer in saying that we can yet release the classes she's talked about, recognising all the points she's made. But again, it is always based on the advice that we get from the medical professionals, taking the whole thing into account, and we've sort of had that debate previously. But competent authorities are meeting tomorrow to determine the next steps. I don't know if they'll be in that step or if they'll be then considered in the next one, sir.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes, Deputy.
Can the Chief Minister give some reassurance that these sorts of activities will be allowed to recommence before activities such as visiting pubs and non-essential shops, please?
Sir, the latter, absolutely. The former, sir, will be a matter for competent authorities, sir. It's all about overall impact, sir, within the community, sir. But I'm also aware that this matter is being looked at, sir.
Deputy Ward.
Oops, thank you, sir. I have a question that came from a constituent, so that I said I would ask, and I'll paraphrase it. It's probably best to. Can I ask the Chief Minister why the Assembly is still virtual, and does he believe this is because it is unsafe for us to meet in person? In particular, when schools are physically in attendance and other key workers are face to face with people day to day. Thank you, sir.
Sir, part of it is around the whole issue of gatherings. So in other words, of the Assembly as 49 in a very close confined space being one of the issues. But in general, sir, we've gone through this debate a number of times, and we've talked about the overall balance of harms. We've also talked about if we use education as the area that the risk to date in Jersey of transmission in the educational sphere is less than what we've been seeing in the community, and therefore the risk is low versus the damage that is caused by not having the educational, by not having the schools open. That's the fundamental principle we've been sticking to, sir, and that's very clearly, as we all know, and it is hugely difficult based on the advice we've received. I will say I did visit one of the primary schools last week with the Minister for Children and Housing, and it was really great. Actually, the reaction of the children, particularly, was really heartwarming as to why they're so pleased to be back in that safe environment. And that is all around long-term benefits of education and also the mental health side, sir.
Quick supplementary, sir.
Yes,
I just checked with the Chief Minister then that he remains confident that the return to school is safe for students, for teachers and for the wider public, and he will maintain that position. Thank you, sir.
Sir, to date, I remain confident. We monitor this position very, very regularly, and that's why, for example, the extra measures and the testing regimes, so the testing regime is being trialled, I think, this week, and then will be rolled out further. Those are extra measures we've put in place. That's the testing regime in the schools. And so we monitor regularly, and obviously we want to assess the impact of the opening of the schools as well, sir. And that's one of the deliberations that's going on in discussions during the course of this week, sir. But to date, I remain confident, sir.
Deputy Sutton. I beg your pardon, Deputy Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. As the government finalises its extended payroll support at further cost both to the public purse and also in terms of the well-being to those struggling business people and their staff, will the Chief Minister acknowledge that, one, elimination is still possible as an alternative strategy, and two, that he will give serious and careful consideration to an alternative strategy in order to allow our internal economy to reopen within the shortest time frame possible?
I need to clarify the question, sir. When the Senator refers to an alternative strategy, is this the one that she, Senator Pallett and the Deputy St Martin's emailed to a number of people, including the Chamber of Commerce, approximately 2 weeks ago?
Yes, the Chief Minister is aware of an alternative proposal and also the elimination strategy as proposed by Deputy Pershard some months ago.
So the proposal that was put in place, that certainly was emailed to myself, has been forwarded to STAC. It is my understanding they were looking at it yesterday, and I will await their response. My initial view, and I emphasise this as a layman, as it were, was that the requirement to essentially one cannot force someone to take a test, and I think that may be the flaw in the requirements that was being suggested. In terms of elimination, sir, I think where we are is we are rolling out the vaccination programme. That is going exceptionally well, and I think that's got to be our focus, sir, rather than changing horse in midstream.
That brings the period of questions for the Chief Minister to an end, and that concludes all of the periods allocated for questions. Before moving on to public business, I understand, Deputy St Mary, that you would like to resume with the proposition to fill the vacant membership of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel.
Yes, please, sir.
You have proposed and seconded excuse me. You're proposing, I think, the Deputy of St Martin and Senator Pallett. Is that correct?
That is indeed correct, sir.
And that was already seconded. My understanding, I think, was that the proposition proposing Senator Mezek had now been withdrawn with his agreement. Is that correct?
I'm informed by Senator Mezek that he wasn't aware that he was being proposed, and he, for the moment, does withdraw that. Yes, sir.
I cannot now recall who proposed Senator Mezek, and I wonder if that could be confirmed.
I think it might be Deputy Higgins.
Indeed, I think it was Deputy Higgins. Deputy Higgins, do you confirm that position?
I haven't been consulted, sir. Mind you, I didn't consult Senator Mezek when I actually put his name forward, but
well, I think it's a bit difficult to put someone forward for a job if they don't know you've proposed them.
Well, he had indicated in his speech, sir, that he would be prepared to sit on the panel, and therefore I thought it was fine. However, if he and both the Deputy of St Mary have decided they can't work with each other, then I will withdraw it. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure that's a necessary assumption to be taken from the fact that that there is no, but you do withdraw that. Very well. Are there any other nominations? Senator Mezek, I think I should afford you the courtesy of being able to speak, given that your name has been bandied about.
Yes, thank you, sir. It was just to confirm that I spoke to the Deputy of St Mary over the lunch break, and he's decided an immediate way forward on this, with it potentially being open to working together in the future, and that's clearly the best way to proceed, rather than have me forced onto the panel on terms that aren't necessarily clear.
Thank you very much indeed, Senator. So that's makes the matter clear. I then ask again, are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, then I declare that the Deputy of St Martin and Senator Pallett are members of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. Very well, we now move to public business. I will remind members that we're operating the time limits for speeches, which the Assembly approved on the 7th of October, and the greffier will ring the famous bell now when the time is up. The first item of public business is the draft amendment number 51 to the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey, P161, lodged by Deputy Wickenden. The principal responder will be the chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Amendment number 51 of the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey. The States make the following amendment to the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey under Article 48 of the States of Jersey Law 2005.
Deputy Wickenden.
Thank you, sir. So we'll try this one again. I'm bringing this amendment to the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey to improve and strengthen the independence of our system of scrutiny and to improve public confidence in the system. My objectives in lodging this proposition are solely to enhance our procedures and make them stronger, involving clear structures of accountability and to ensure better public perception of those procedures. Currently, without standing orders, it's possible for a political party to have one of their members be a minister and another the chair of a scrutiny panel that reviews the said minister's policies. I believe that this weakens the public perception of scrutiny as the independent critical friend of government and undermines trust that government ministers are being held sufficiently to account and that their decisions are being appropriately and properly challenged. In this amendment, I'm asking that we change standing orders specifically to scrutiny panels and the Public Accounts Committee so that any member would not be able to be the chair of a scrutiny panel if they're simultaneously in the same political party as any of the ministers set out in Standing Orders 120. And that members cannot be the chair of Public Accounts Committee if any minister of the same political party is the same as that member. I have just left this to scrutiny chairs and not to scrutiny members. Scrutiny chairs and panels, unlike panel members, have the ability to call in draft legislation for scrutiny that are lodged by the ministers they hold to account. Additionally, they are able to set the tone of reviews as the author of the forward and are publicly seen as the face of their prospective panels. Really what I saw here and when I was looking at this, and the reason I've brought this amendment is I was looking at our procedures, and if I gave a hypothetical and said that we had a political party in the next elections that put a lot of people forward and won a lot of seats and they won a majority, currently within our standing orders, it would be possible for that political party with a majority to elect in all the Council of Ministers and at the same time put all of their party members in as scrutiny chairs because of their sheer voting power within the Assembly. And I just don't think that's right to hold the checks and balances as well as the policy making decisions within the framework of our current government, which is why I brought this proposition and the changes to the Assembly to say, oh, this is how I feel. And ask members of the Assembly if they feel the same way too, sir. So with that, sir, I'm going to propose my proposition. Thank you very much.
Is the proposition seconded? Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Well, then I open the debate. Senator Mezek, you've indicated a desire to speak.
Yes, thank you, sir. I've got the Hansard up in front of me from the last time we had this debate, and it's tempting to just read the same speech out again, but I won't put members through that. And I have to say that I think it's disappointing to be back in this position again because the facts haven't changed at all since the last time this was before the Assembly. Those facts being that this is not a good proposition. That it's based on misunderstandings and the PPC comments which have been lodged to the original version of this proposition make clear in the report that it's littered with factual inaccuracies and misrepresentations of how the situation works in other jurisdictions, and that is all still true. But there is a better way forward to deal with the issue that Deputy Wickenden alludes to. He talks about making sure that there are safeguards in our processes to ensure that scrutiny is defended and upheld as an important part of our parliamentary process, and that we can have confidence that it is being done without fear or favour and is being done objectively. Obviously, we all support that aim, and that's the right thing to do. His proposition is flawed for what it doesn't include, and to uniquely make this imposition on members of political parties is to treat one category of the Assembly as second-class members, which is clearly unfair. But it misses the point that there are plenty of other ways that the objectivity of scrutiny could theoretically be undermined depending on who held the positions of chair. It's not just the case that party colleagues will work closely together and be associated, certainly in the minds of the public, together, but it is the case that there maybe members of the Assembly who are related, who are known to be very close friends, or, and this is the case for Deputy Wickenden, who were elected on a joint electoral platform with other members. Now, none of that is wrong in itself, and I certainly believe, certainly within my memory, that those who have held the positions of chair have, without any exception that I can recall, conducted their roles properly, and whether there was any concerns behind the scene or not that I'm not aware of, that would have been dealt with by the other members of the panel holding their chairs to account, and the officers who would presumably step in and advise members purely in an objective way if they were crossing any lines in terms of code of conduct or impartiality. So it's weird to impose it on one category of member, and it is not in line with best practice in other jurisdictions. And the reasons he gave for this in the in his report have been dispelled by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. And as the leader of the only party that's represented in the Assembly, I think that there is a smarter way forward on this issue, because it may to some feel like a bit of a novelty that there is a party in the Assembly, but we've demonstrated over 2 elections that we're not going anywhere, and if the public are happy for at least a number of us to remain in the Assembly in future, then that's down to them, not down to the Assembly. That rather than adopt this proposition, which prescribes something weird and unusual in isolation with no reference to any of the other issues that could arise, a better way forward is to reject this proposition and instead vote for P166, which is on the order paper for later today, which I've lodged, which says openly that the Privileges and Procedures Committee should investigate and bring forward amendments that are appropriate, and that's the key word there, appropriate, to standing orders to account for the fact that in future there may well be some members of the Assembly who are associated with a political party, and that if there can be a framework that's put in place that is clear on what the roles and responsibilities of those elected states members are, without giving them a privileged position in the Assembly, but also without infringing on their ability to do the job that they're elected by the public to do, then that's a more sensible way forward, because it can be a holistic approach. Look at the other issues, because it's not just scrutiny that some might want to pick an issue with, and there can be other things as well that ought to be looked at properly. And I guess the backdrop to this is in the very first part of Deputy Wickenden's amendment standing orders, he has to actually put in the standing orders the definition of what a political party is, because currently it's not even in the standing orders. There's no reference to it whatsoever. And it is the case that another political party could form tomorrow and not meet the definition that he's putting in standing orders because they choose not to register with the Royal Court immediately. Right now, if a party registers with the Royal Court, it only offers them one tangible thing, and that is to have the name of the political party on the ballot paper. That's literally the only thing a party gets from registering with the Royal Court. So some may ask, well, why bother registering at all then? Or we could theoretically register in order to fight an election and then deregister immediately afterwards, so that we could go the next 4 years without having any of these rules applied to us, without having to submit our accounts to the Royal Court and all of that, and we'd be better off for doing that. But that's clearly wrong and inappropriate. And there are also no procedures in the Assembly or in the offices of the GREF to recognise who is or who isn't a member of a party. There's no requirement to submit membership lists. There's no requirements on me as the parliamentary leader of the party to divulge any such information or say who has the whip or who doesn't have the whip or anything like that. So So none of this is taken into account. It's one issue in isolation, badly presented with misinformation underpinning it. So I ask members, let's do this in a more sensible way, because we as the only existing party are more than happy for us to be held to account to important rules and standards that meet best practice, that tell us what our responsibilities are as members of the Assembly, what the demarcations are, what's inappropriate for us to do. We're more than happy to abide by all of that, but it makes more sense for it to be done in a holistic way, with a proper investigation led by PPC, so that it be impartial, that by the end of this year can bring forward those changes and say, right, this is what parties can and can't do when they're in the Assembly, the whole package. And that to me seems like a much more sensible way forward. So I ask members to reject this proposition and instead support P 166 shortly, which I think provides a much more sensible way forward.
Thank you very much, Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. And I'm pleased that this debate is taking a swifter and so far more congenial tone than it did last time. So at the heart of it, Deputy Wickenden is suggesting that the current procedures weaken scrutiny, yet he has provided no specific evidence as to his particular concerns in that respect. As Senator Mezek has outlined, he has brought P 166, which will seek to confirm how best political parties, which will inevitably develop in the space between now and the general election, how they should form and be managed within our Assembly structure. But it is of absolute importance that the scrutiny process is an objective process. It's one that is carefully set out and well understood, along with the terms of engagement that is agreed between the government and the Scrutiny Liaison Committee and all scrutiny members each term. So it is my feeling that all members of scrutiny have participated wholeheartedly during this Assembly, and officers have demonstrated a significant commitment to their work and have coped with a very responsive group of scrutiny members who are keen to properly do their work with gusto and great dedication. So we've seen a great rate of work within the scrutiny panels, which is to be commended. And I have no concerns as President of the Scrutiny Liaison Committee about any such conflicts. Accountability and transparency are, of course, of paramount importance within any government's framework. And if I may offer the Assembly an example of the seriousness with which scrutiny takes the rules that are there to guide us, it is very clear that the scrutiny minutes are all shared publicly for all to see if they so wish, whereas perhaps the government is not meeting its part of the bargain at this time. We have the Council of Ministers minutes, the Competent Authorities minutes, the Emergencies Council minutes, and also the STAC minutes that are not properly recorded and openly, either for scrutiny members or for the public to see as requested. And so I would respectfully recommend that the bringer of this proposition might focus as a member of the government on strengthening the processes of his government rather than seeking to pursue this proposition any further. So I will not be supporting this proposition. However, I will wholeheartedly be supporting the proposition of Senator Mezek when it does come. And so with that, I hope that we will swiftly dispatch this proposition. Thank you.
All right, Senator Deputy Ash.
Thank you, sir. I believe I poet to the Assembly to speak in this debate because I feel that I'm partly to blame for the controversy that this topic appeared to generate last time, as it was myself who nominated Deputy Ward for his role as a scrutiny chair. This was partly because he was a teacher and I felt he fitted the role well, and of course partly because I didn't know him very well at the time. But on a more serious note, sir, I do feel that this controversy should never have become a personal matter, and I'm sure no one would cast any aspiration in the direction of Deputy Ward. From where I observe, sir, he has acted in the very best traditions of the role. He is also a man who has personally shown excellent judgment, sir, not least in choosing to support Leyton Orient rather than the somewhat unsavoury alternative of West Ham United. But, sir, this is not about Deputy Ward. This is about, should we allow a situation to exist where there is a potential for conflict of interest? Sir, the role of scrutiny is deemed to be that of a critical friend. I, of course, realise that at times this has strayed from that concept, and the only occasion it would be the case were should one's critical friends number Ronnie and Reggie. But the principle still stands. Let me leave you, sir, with the one thought that was raised by Deputy Wickenden that I think is very worth considering. Should we, in the future of the Assembly, have a party that enjoys an overall majority, it would be possible for them to vote in party members to every single scrutiny chair position. Would that be a desirable situation for this Assembly to find itself in? I personally think not. Thank you, sir.
Conor Thompson-Watt.
Thank you, sir. And before I start, I just say I listened with great interest to Senator Moore's speech, and the principles she outlines, I would agree with. They should apply equally to both scrutiny and to government, and she's entirely right to make that point. So the last time this was debated, this proposition stirred up a lot of emotion, quite unnecessarily in my view. Corporate governance, due diligence, and the management of conflicts, management of interest perceived and real, are something that in a lifetime of working in financial services and of having served as the director of a regulated entry are second nature to me. One quickly learns that the perception of a conflict and the effective management of the same are paramount. The process should not in any way be seen as personal, and to interpret as such is not, in my view, either correct or realistic. Indeed, the reverse is in reality true, as such guidelines are there to protect individual office holders from such accusations. With appropriate safeguards and segregation of duties and responsibilities, accusations of bias or favouritism in any decision can have no realistic basis and are entirely defendable even against the most cynical critic. This proposition does not preclude any member who is also a party member from sitting on a scrutiny panel, even if that panel scrutinises a minister who is also a member of the same panel. But it would not allow a party member to chair any such panel, and this to me makes sense. In the previous debates, there were suggestions in a particular situation cited that this cast doubt over a member's integrity. However, to suggest this is to entirely miss the point. One needs to look at the issue from the perspective of a neutral party. Neither side of the equation, i.e. the minister or the scrutiny chair, can be perceived, and that's the important word, as impartial. As both are members of the same party and have an agreed manifesto positions on any issue or policy. In reality, we of course know that both will act with complete integrity, but it is their roles, not the individual, that are in potential conflict, which is less than ideal, and indeed is the very issue that this proposition seeks to address. To cite a rather extreme example, but to put this into a rather clear context, similar conflicts exist in the Honorary Police. Centeneer cannot process the prosecution of a case either at parish hall inquiry level or indeed subsequently if the process leads to the magistrate's court. If that centenaire is the investigating or the arresting officer. It is not that anyone thinks the centenaire will not act with integrity, it is the perception that counts, that of complete objectivity and impartiality. As I said, this is an extreme example, but it does clearly illustrate the clarity with where the issue lies. So I'm in support of this amendment, not least because it provides a degree of protection to party members who find themselves in this situation, and it also ensures that the scrutiny process recognises and manages perceived conflicts of interest and is seen to do so. So I will support this amendment, and indeed I will also support Senator Mezik's rather widely cast proposition on the same issue, because I think it is a good proposition and seeks to achieve broadly the same thing. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Contab. Senator Volwa.
Thank you, sir, and I'm grateful to follow the Constable of St One's for a number of reasons. Actually, I think we're at a juncture in terms of where we are with regards to machinery of government. And the reason why I say that is because listening to both Senator Mezik, Senator Moore, and some reference to the terms of controversy, I don't think this needs to be seen as controversy. So there is an issue that we have with regards to party politics, which Senator Mezik has referred to in his proposition that he's bringing forward. And conflicts of interest are something that is mentioned time and again, but not necessarily referred to in a way that we all comply with. And I have to also refer to the fact that any member standing for a position for chair or a position for a ministerial position is agreed for by the States Assembly. The Constable of St One's referred to management of due diligence and perception of conflict, which is extremely important, particularly in roles that we observe in terms of public life. From my perspective, and I'm grateful to Deputy Labby for nominating me and being appointed to the Privileges and Procedures Committee today to look at machinery of government, because going forward, if we as an Estates Assembly agree that machinery of government is the right way forward for this island and the right way for us to represent our island in the way that we see fit, then many of these things are going to have to be continuously considered in a respectable, objective and evidence-based way. Not because we see others, whether they're part of a party or whether they're partly friends or whatever that might be, in which the terms people term their speeches on. The issue that I see here, and I respect Deputy Wickenden for bringing this, because it actually raises issues in a wider context around where we're moving in terms of our representation as a democracy to the public that we represent. Senator Moore referred to the objectiveness of processes with regards to scrutiny. Absolutely, totally and utterly agree with that. And it's extremely important that we do recognise that. But the conflicts of interest, whether that's within the Council of Ministers, or whether that's the civil service, or whether that's within scrutiny, there's never actually been resolved in terms of understanding perceived or actual conflicts of interest. And determining that in the right way, I think, is important to assure not just ourselves as a State Assembly, but also as the public, that we recognise the perimeters that we work within to assure the trust and confidence that we work for the public. I'm not sure whether there's any other members willing to speak. I recognise what Deputy Wickenden is trying to achieve here, but actually I think we're on a pasture in terms of machinery of government where we're moving towards more party politics. Whether I personally agree with that or not, sir, this actually raises some questions in particular about how we move forward with what we do in terms of governing our island, conflicts of interest, management of due diligence, and assuring trust and confidence amongst our population that we represent as representatives to make the right decisions for our population. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Senator, does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir, and I just got my information. So I thought I'd speak earlier. I don't know how many people will speak. I remain disappointed that this proposition has been brought to the Assembly, and when it was initially debated, it did indeed make me very angry. And I would like to apologise to the Assembly for showing it. It's not the way to represent your constituents, and therefore let's look at this in a more considered way. I see the proposition has the possibility of debate on two different levels. The first is a very simplistic level of association of two roles, and by default seeing a lack of integrity and professionalism in a person who may take them on. It's a classic straw man argument that drives this form of simplistic and misguided debate. A straw man fallacy occurs when someone takes an argument or point, distorts it or exaggerates it in some kind of extreme way, and then attacks the extreme distortion, as if there were absolute reality in the claim they were making. And that's what we've seen, and I think we've seen a slight example of that in one of the previous speakers, when we talk about this is a good way for people to be protected. This is a straw man proposition. It's full of unsubstantiated suggestion and inaccuracies. So, sir, I can get the words out then. Indeed, the original comments paper on P143 stated that Deputy Wickenden has not provided any evidence of how public confidence in the Assembly or scrutiny system has been diminished because Deputy Ward leads the panel scrutinising the work of the Children's Minister. And this is where we are at in the simplistic level with this debate. But we need to move beyond this simplicity, as this proposition will have implications for the nature of scrutiny and the Assembly. It seems that the proposer does not understand the role of scrutiny, the processes surrounding it, and the interdependency of scrutiny of individual members, scrutiny officers, the greffier, and the agreed processes that underlie scrutiny itself. I have several concerns regarding the purpose and implications of this proposition, and it's difficult to ignore the personal effect it would have had on myself. The change to the Minister came after this proposition, and so the personal nature of this proposition still disappoints me. At no time did Deputy approach me to discuss what he intended to do, regardless of the implications, which would have been immediate, and I would have been removed from position. This proposition seeks to ban members of a declared political party from chairing a scrutiny panel that has another member of that party as a minister. There are significant consequences to this. I have to give a context, as the detail is vital in a deeper discussion. The only member of the Assembly this would have affected is me. The proposition came into effect immediately, meaning I would have been removed from the chair of Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. This is the scrutiny of 3 separate ministers, without any opportunity to respond. It seems the procedures in place in standing orders removing scrutiny chairs would have been ignored. Any panel is made up of members from across the Assembly. Any declared party membership or not is not relevant to the panel. As a chair of a panel, you must be elected by the Assembly. Any concerns re-allegiance can be questioned during this time, and members can vote accordingly. Indeed, the minister themselves cannot vote in that election. I would like to ask as well the Deputy what he thinks the role of the chair on the panel is. Does he really think that the entire thoughts and actions of the panel can be controlled by the chair? I've been on a panel with Deputies Dublé, Higgins, Pamplin and Poynton, and previously Deputy Hewlin. And with greatest respect, good luck in telling these elected members what to do. I have also worked on a number of panels with members from across the Assembly, and I believe I did so in the spirit of scrutiny and left my party allegiance behind in doing so. Scrutiny is a process accompanied by several regulations and procedures. For example, any scrutiny review has a full set of terms of reference that need to be agreed with the whole panel before moving forward. They are specific and they direct the actions of the panel. They must further be agreed by the Scrutiny Liaison Committee, a second check in the process. Scrutiny panels are overseen by Scrutiny Liaison Committee that is set up to ensure processes that are followed, currently chaired by Senator Moore. The outcome of this proposition is to question this panel's ability to oversee work, but not directly, but by suggestion. Panels scrutinise more than one minister. Should this proposition be agreed, I would have been banned, so an elected member would have been banned from not just for a fellow party member, but from chairing a panel with non-party members. The change of minister does not change this implication. All party members will be banned from chairing PAC if any member of the party is a minister. Should future parties be created, this could create a significant problem for this key post. At no time have there been any issues raised over my conduct as chair. Indeed, we heard from the head of PPC stated publicly in this assembly that the review into teacher recruitment and retention was the best report he'd ever read. In the June sitting of this assembly, Scrutiny Liaison brought an amendment to standing orders to add the Children's Minister to my remit. It was voted on 40 pour and 0 contre. I note that Deputy Wigginton was absent and did not vote. Before this, the only scrutiny undertaken of the Children's Minister was via the review panel set up to look at the response to the care inquiry. Meetings and hearings of this type of the panel are not comparable to normal scrutiny panels. So when the time came to actually change that scrutiny and make it more in-depth, it came to the Assembly and it was clear as to what was happening, and there was not a single contrary view. Why that would suddenly change now, I don't know. Questions planned are agreed by the entire panel before any hearing of the minister. They are shared out to be asked by any member of the panel, and that's the way I work with the panel anyway, and any member has the freedom to add questions and follow up with further questioning in the hearing. Indeed, that's a vital part of the hearing, and I would say we hope in scrutiny that ministers are just a little bit anxious about sitting in front of us, even though we are a critical friend. The question topics, the general subject areas, the headings, if you like, for the paragraphs are sent to all ministers across panels, because otherwise there's no preparation and it's not a particularly useful scrutiny process. But that's as far as it goes. And I think that element of scrutiny has to be maintained and should be by everybody. I have never had any suggestion from a member of the public, a panel member or a member of the Assembly that my party membership has shown in any hearing. I had great personal disappointment in the question of my integrity in this role, and regardless of what Constable Buchanan says, and I think what he's doing is convincing himself that this of something that doesn't exist. The role it does question my integrity as a scrutiny chair. I've worked tirelessly and committed significant time to the role. Reviews have been thorough and produced numerous recommendations that are challenging to all ministers. This included amendments to decisions made by the Children's Minister in the last government plan, which was subsequently agreed by the Assembly and changed track of that minister. I've worked collaboratively with members from across the Assembly on the panel, which do not include any other Reform Jersey member. And as for this notion that if a party had so many people elected, they would take over scrutiny. So we are so far away from that. And I think the better option is to do exactly what Senator Mezek is doing and very openly doing, is saying we need PPC to look at that possibility in those rules. And I would absolutely agree with that. And I'll come back to a simple reason why that is the case at the end. So I see this proposition as a badly considered, and I'm afraid I do see it as a slightly personal attack, which I cannot account for, and why this would be the case. And that's, I suppose that's the rough and tumble of politics, but we need to ignore. I mean, the comments paper from the PPC outlined several factual inaccuracies in the accompanying report to this proposition. And there is an irony that such a report would never pass the fact-checking process in scrutiny. There seems to be a lack of understanding regards the independent role of scrutiny in governance as a process. I would suggest there's a very good course offered by the CPA, the Advanced Certificate in Parliamentary Governance, that addresses these and many other issues of governance. I know that several new members have been undertaking this study, and I humbly suggest that deputies and people look at this course, because it does open your mind to this. I urge members to look at the CPA benchmarks for Parliament. If there was a feeling that we need to discuss the role of parties in our Assembly, let's do that, but in an intelligent, informed and constructive way. Indeed, in the discussion I've had with politicians from around the world during the course, our scrutiny process is robust with key features that are modelled for others. One being the importance and clarity of roles in government, the need for clearly defined opposition, and the need for clearly defined scrutiny roles. They are separate and they must remain so. But if they exist, we have stronger governance because everyone is held to account. But why attack political parties? The most transparent alliances are from Reform Jersey members. We have declared our party in the Royal Court. You know the members in this Assembly. The manifesto was stood on and the 10 key areas we will pursue. Whether you like the notion of parties, whether you like reform or whether you like individual members is irrelevant in the debate. This is about whether you believe independent this is important. This is about whether you believe that independent scrutiny is possible or not, and whether arbitrary barriers will be put in place to formally say that. Be careful what you vote for. How far we have to go in declaring of alliances. Will we inevitably ban chairing panels for those in some way who went to school together, who are Masons, those who stand together on election platforms, appear on collective election posters but not declare as a party, friendship groups, those who attend the same church? I'm being careful now, sir, because I'm straying into the areas of the straw man debate. The answer is no, because scrutiny is a process that requires objectivity and cross-party or assembly working. There is a process available. There is a process available, and it should not be changed. Which is called. Sorry, there is a process available if that process is not working. It's called a vote of no confidence in the scrutiny chair. If the deputy has concerns over mine or any other scrutiny chair's conduct, bring a vote of no confidence with evidence and a reasoned argument. This proposition is neither of these. We must strive to constantly improve the transparency, objectivity and professionalism of scrutiny. This proposition is not the way to do it, and in fact offers a genuine threat to the process working. Staffing scrutiny panels and having committed chairs could become almost impossible should other parties be formed, or other areas of allegiance must be declared as mentioned above. There are far more important areas to be worked on at the moment, sir. I know the Chief Minister is a scrutineer, an active scrutineer in previous Assembly, and I'm sure he understands the argument that I'm making. And I would not want to see this as an attack on scrutiny, sir. So I asked before the deputy to withdraw this, but we've come back, so there we go. I would say that if he does not believe that anyone is working with integrity, or indeed any other chair is, bring a vote of no confidence with evidence and have the Assembly vote on the outcome. Failing that, I urge members to vote overwhelmingly against this proposition, support scrutiny in its work it does, and do not allow government to undermine the process of scrutiny with actions in this way. And indeed, let's look more widely at the role of political parties together with using the vehicle we have, which is PPC, as we move forward. So I urge members to reject this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Murrell.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to everyone who's spoken so far. In the last speech, there's a lot of mentions of that phrase straw man argument, and I can't help but think that the straw man argument in play there was that this is a proposition about Deputy Ward. It's not a proposition about Deputy Ward, and that to suggest so, I think, is a straw man argument. For my mind, this isn't actually about scrutiny today. This entire proposition is about scrutiny tomorrow and in the years to come, because I believe Senator Moore mentioned the likelihood of political parties emerging in the future, and certainly electoral reforms do suggest that there will be a stronger likelihood of political parties forming in the future. And so I think it is right that we look at the effect of political parties on, or the potential effect of political parties on scrutiny, which, following my 2.5 years in scrutiny, I'm there's no question I want to remain a champion of scrutiny. It's so vital to holding the government to account. And there will potentially be a time when a majority party is able to not only control the government, but could potentially control scrutiny. And I mean, it's one of the things that I find most difficult to understand about the Westminster parliamentary process, is the way that the government in Westminster also effectively controls scrutiny through the select committee system. And their scrutiny system isn't the same as ours, but it in my mind, does mean that the select committee system is far, far weaker than our own system. In fact, we've seen a very recent example in the UK whereby the leader of the House of Commons recently dissolved a scrutiny committee, thereby making it impossible for them to scrutinise the free trade agreement that was just being signed with the EU. That, to my mind, is incredibly dangerous. And I hope the people of the United Kingdom can see it for what it is, which is the worst form of politics possible. Similarly, we had earlier in the current UK Prime Minister's term after the election, he had a particular member of Parliament that he wanted to have elected to the Security and Intelligence Committee. But that essentially, as I understand it, and I do apologise to those people concerned if I've got this wrong, was basically the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom wanted someone he felt that he would have greater control over chairing that committee. But thankfully, the opposition worked with another, perhaps stronger, more independently minded Conservative Party MP to make sure that that person was installed, thereby just avoiding the situation where that vitally important committee in in Westminster would have become nothing but a puppet of the government.
Deputy Murray, I interrupt you. Senator Vowler is raising a point of order. It's not clear to me whether the senator wants to. Oh,
she's raising
points point of order
also,
or point of clarification. Would you like to nail your colours to the mast, Senator Vowler, which you're actually after?
Yes, no, thank you, sir. Deputy Morale keeps referring to examples and comparative assessments of our current political regime with regards to the UK. Select committees are not the same as scrutiny.
Well, I'm sorry. You haven't. You aren't. Are you asking for a point of clarification from the deputy of his speech? Because he hasn't referenced your speech, so it's difficult for you to give a point of clarification of your speech, and I'm not sure it covered those points.
Okay, point of clarification then, sir, is that will he agree that select committees in the UK with regards to Westminster are not aligned to scrutiny panels in Jersey? They do not reflect each other whatsoever.
Well, that's not really a point of clarification. It might be if you could have asked Deputy Morell to clarify his understanding of how scrutiny panels and whether or not they are similar to select committees in the United Kingdom. But I think you put that as an assertion rather than a question. But do you wish to provide clarification, Deputy Morell?
Thank you, sir. And indeed, if the senators to look back at the Hansard of the speech I'm currently making, she'll see that I started by saying select committees and our scrutiny processes are not the same. And so I believe that is the clarification made earlier in this speech, sir. So continuing is, nonetheless, select committees do form part of the scrutiny process in the United Kingdom. And we can see how absurd the situation is where government in the United Kingdom controls that process. And it's deeply worrying. I genuinely don't understand how citizens of the United Kingdom put up with that. Because whilst we've heard about the objectivity of the scrutiny process, and I do agree to a certain extent, the scrutiny process in Jersey is still a political process. And so, for instance, it is scrutiny chairs who I would suggest, through the experience that I have seen in these past 2.5 years, have the greatest influence over the panel. And so it is often a scrutiny chair who will help the panel decide or guide the panel to decide where reviews are into which subjects reviews take place, into which subject reviews don't take place, which questions to include on question paper, which questions not to include on the question paper. And so whilst the panel absolutely is able to discuss that, it does depend on how engaged that panel is and how much room and they are willing to give the scrutiny chair as to how much influence that scrutiny chair has. And so I am not interested in the situation today. I am content with the situation today. My concern is for the situation in coming years, as with the likelihood that political parties do develop. I am genuinely worried that we will end up in a situation whereby political parties could end up controlling both sides of the government scrutiny aspect of the States Assembly. And so it's with that in mind that I have sympathy with Deputy Wickendon's proposition before us. And I do hope that current members of scrutiny understand that it could be a genuine concern in the coming years. And so that said, sir, I also have an issue, and Deputy Ward, referring to Deputy Ward, it's an issue that I've raised a number of times, things like the Deputy Ward's proposition on free buses and other such like, whereby I do believe some things need to take place within a broader piece of work. And I also think that this is one of them. Deputy Wickendon has highlighted one genuine potential problem for the States Assembly, but Deputy Mezek's forthcoming proposition, as he has already mentioned, approaches it from a broader perspective and asks PPC to do a broader piece of work. And I think it is in this situation, in the way that free bus piece of work needed to be part of the Sustainable Transport Plan and not an ad hoc proposition of its own. I think it is the same in this case, that whilst Deputy Wickendon has highlighted a potential problem for the future, it should be dealt with as part of a broader piece of work and not through an ad hoc proposition. And so, sir, I hope I have highlighted to members that let's not get hung up on the personalities and the people we see in the States Assembly today. Think about the future. Always think, as I did when I sat in scrutiny, think about the worst case scenario. And there are reasons when you look around countries we think of as ordinarily in strong democracies, there are reasons to think about the worst case scenario. And in this case, the worst case scenario is what happens if one party dominates the States Assembly. We need to think about that. And as such, we really should undertake a review into the way political parties are dealt with through standing orders and into the way that political parties will operate in a government and scrutiny situation. But I think it is proper to do that through a broader process and not just through this one ad hoc proposition. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Wickendon to respond.
Thank you, sir. And can I thank everyone that has contributed to this debate and the much better tone that it's taken this time round. Where to start on this one? I think I have to say that this proposition is not about attacking scrutiny, like some people have put forward. It's not about attacking an individual member, as other people have put forward. This is the fact that I was looking at the standing orders, and the standing orders aren't owned by scrutiny and they're not owned by government, and as Senator Moore kind of alluded to, they're owned by this assembly, and I've brought a proposition to make a change in a conflict that I saw. Now, I could have brought this at the end of the term. I could have turned around and said, right, well, let's just leave that for now, this conflict, and we'll just leave it there. But so I worked for many, many years in the finance industry, and there was one thing that you don't do, is that you see something wrong happening and you say, all right, well, do you know what, we'll leave it because it affects this person who's, you know, they're gone in 2 years. They're benefiting from it, but they're gone in 2 years' time. And we'll just ignore it for now. Yeah, and we'll just leave it until that person goes. You don't say that. When you see a conflict or a problem, you have to address it straight away. And I'm not willing to sit and wait back. So when I saw a conflict, and as I perceived, I put in a change for it. I haven't at all ever, my proposition, in my speeches, in anything that I've done, questioned anyone's integrity. I've seen a problem, and I've seen somewhere where I think that I can strengthen our rules, and I've put it through. And it feels like people aren't looking at this rule change objectively, like they're saying that it's all about what we do. I've been saying now I'm gonna deal with PPC because their comments paper I absolutely totally disagree with, sir. And I've sent them an email individually to each of them explaining exactly why I don't agree with them. It is not their place, sir, to write a comments paper that creates conflicts in the Assembly, that tries to say that I am doing something that isn't written within the report and accuse me of being vindictive to another member. That's not their position. In their comments paper, there were 647 words, and only 128 of them were about the process that I'm trying to change, which is their job. And out of those 128 words that they used within the process, sir, it was to say they weren't going to look at it. Well, I'm sorry, I was disgusted by PPC's position and the way that they went about it, and I totally reject the fact that they even did it. It was not their job to create conflict in the Assembly and to asperse my my motives for my proposition. So I don't agree with the PPC's comment paper, and I don't accept it. I want to deal with Senator Mezek's great speeches, and we all know that he is absolutely brilliant with a microphone in front of him, and he can talk, and he comes across brilliantly. However, he mentioned Hansard at the very beginning. I'm going to go back to Hansard of P73 2017 amendment, which was the then Deputy Mezek's proposition to say that all ministers should not be allowed to vote for the scrutiny chairs of all scrutiny chair positions. And within his speech, he says these words, sir. I think it's fair to say that even if ministers were going to act with professionalism, which, as the Deputy St John said, they certainly have done previously when it comes to this, there is certainly at least a perception of conflict there. I will turn it round and I will ask members to think of it this way. Imagine the hypothetical, not so distant future where I was serving as a minister. Who would I prefer to have scrutinising my department? Deputy Southern or somebody else? But of course I'd want Deputy Southern scrutinising it because he is somebody who I know is very politically sympathetic to my position and he is my friend. Great, so speaking of which, I prefer to have him scrutinising me. Would members of the Assembly feel comfortable with me getting on a job in government in a ministerial department with Deputy Southern being the chair of the scrutiny panel that are scrutinising my work? Well, I would say that would not necessarily be appropriate. It would be better to get someone else in that political instance. Now, the then Deputy Mezek makes a very clear point about the fact that there is a perceived conflict within this hypothetical situation. So how is it now when I bring a change to this exact scenario for the future that now it's changed? Because it's no longer hypothetical, it's now actual. So I also reject what the Senator Mezek has said in that way, because it seems that the argument changes when it feels like it. I'm sorry, sir. I absolutely have tried to make this change for the future to strengthen our procedures. It's no way a personal attack on anyone. And it's not attacking scrutiny, it's not attacking people, it's purely about a conflict that's in this in our procedures that needs to be affected. It doesn't affect Deputy Senator Mezek's proposition. It can be included. Just before Christmas, just before we debated this proposition last time, before it was withdrawn, we agreed to Deputy Doublet's changing in standing orders for parental responsibilities, and even within that report for the Deputy Doublet, it says not more needs to happen. This is just a piece of it that needs to go on, and other possibly ministers need to go and look at other areas that we can change. But the Assembly agreed to change that one part of standing orders, knowing that it wasn't the full piece of work. How is this any different, I say, sir? So I think I will stop there and we can move on to the next item of business, and I uphold my proposition, sir.
Very well. Then I ask the Secretary to place a voting link in the chat. The link is there. I open the voting and ask members to vote on the proposition. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the Secretary to close the voting. The proposition has been defeated. 16 votes pour, 23 votes contre in the link, and of all the four votes counted contre in the chat.
Could we have the pour and the contre, sir?
Yes.
Okay, starting with those members who voted pour using the link, that would be Senator Le Fondre, Deputy Lewis, Deputy St Peter, Senator Valois, Deputy Martin, Constable St Juan, Deputy Pennell, Deputy Wickenden, Deputy Trinity, Deputy Greville, Deputy Guida, Deputy Ash, Deputy Masson, Senator Ferguson, Constable of St John, and the Constable of St Mary. Those voting contra using the link were Deputy Ward, Deputy of St Martin, Constable of St Clement, Senator Mezek, Constable of Greville, Deputy Doublet, Deputy Aye, Deputy Morel, Deputy Lehegra, Constable of St Martin, Constable of St Ballard, Deputy Young, Deputy Pamplin, Deputy Higgins, Deputy Truscott, Deputy Gardner, Constable of St Peter, Senator Pallett, Constable of Trinity, Deputy Alves, Deputy of St John, Constable of St Lawrence, and Senator Farnham. There are also some votes in the chat. All votes contra, Deputy of St Mary, Deputy Southern, Constable of St Helier, and Senator Moore.
Well, the next item of public business is the Draft Financial Services Ombudsman Board Amendment Jersey Regulations D124, lodged by the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture, and I ask the Secretary to read the citation.
Draft Financial Services Ombudsman Board Amendment Jersey Regulations 2000. The states make these regulations under Article 2.5 of the Financial Services Ombudsman Jersey Law 2014.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. This allows members of the Board of the Channel Islands Financial Services Ombudsman, Financial Ombudsman, to be appointed for terms shorter than the existing legislation allows, sir. And this would be in exceptional circumstances and when recommended by the chair. Despite being a pan-island body, the Ombudsman acts as a single entity, effectively with a single combined board of directors empowered through legislation in both Jersey and Guernsey. Appointments to the Ombudsman's board are made jointly between the Minister, sir, for Economic Development and the Guernsey Committee, sir, for Economic Development. Last year, the chair of the board wrote to me and the chair of Guernsey's committee for Economic Development requesting that an existing board member's term be renewed for a period of 1 year. This was in large part due to the refocus of resources that was required, sir, due to the pandemic. This proposition therefore proposes to allow the reappointment of board members for a 1-year term, and I emphasise, sir, reappointment. The board maintains appointments on a staggered basis, ensuring that board members' terms do not expire at the same time. This ensures continuity of corporate knowledge and experience. This 1-year reappointment will fit in with this structure. The request has been supported by the Guernsey Committee for Economic Development, sir, and a proposal for Guernsey legislation to be amended has also been presented. The board member in question is Mr. John Curran, who has held the position since 2014. In addition to bringing forward these regulations, I am required as Minister, sir, to formally notify the Assembly of my intention to reappoint Mr. Curran. Accordingly, details can be found in R5 2021. Just to be absolutely clear, sir, Mr. Curran's reappointment is subject to the Assembly's approval of the draft regulations. It is essential that appointments to public bodies such as the Ombudsman follow due process, sir. Should the Assembly approve this proposition, the Financial Services Ombudsman, Jersey Law 2014, will continue to assume that appointments to the board should be made for a period of 3 to 5 years, sir. This ensures that members are appointed for a term sufficient to allow them to carry out their functions under law, whilst maintaining a proper term limit in line with the appropriate government standards. So, of course, I will be encouraging full diversity and inclusion in any future recruitment process, but I know that I will be pushing at an open door. This will not materially amend the existing governance arrangements of the Financial Ombudsman, sir. And with that, sir, I move the principles. Thank you.
Are the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Captain Morrell.
Thank you, sir. It's really just questions, and I apologise for not having asked them earlier. But there is a time limit of 9 years on the appointment of members to the board of the Channel Islands Financial Ombudsman. And so I was wondering if as the Minister is probably aware from previous speeches I've made in the Assembly, I'm very keen on the governance of the length of time that people serve on boards, particularly with an eye on diversity. And so I was wondering if the Minister would explain how this 1-year reappointment element could work with that 9 years. So basically, could someone be in their 9th year and be reappointed for a 10th year? Or is that 9-year limit a hard limit? That's it. If the Minister could respond, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? No other member wishes to speak? And I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you very much, sir. To the best of my understanding, sir, the 9-year limit is a hard limit and cannot be exceeded, sir. And in this situation, Mr. Curran had served 2 terms, but did not want to serve a 3rd term, sir. But it was given the resource requirements during the pandemic, had agreed to stay on for an additional year. Of course, when we checked the regulations, didn't allow that, so that just corrects that position, sir, which allows a bit more flexibility in the reappointment, sir. Thank you.
Very well, I'll ask the greffier to place a link into the chat, and the vote is on the principles. And I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the greffier to close the voting. The principles have been adopted. 41 votes pour, no votes contre in the link, and 2 further votes pour in the chat. Deputy Sir Mary, does your scrutiny panel wish to call the matter in?
No, thanks, sir. The previous panel did consider this, and in view of the limited nature of the amendment, they are quite content with it. Thank you, sir.
Much indeed. Minister, how do you wish to deal with the matter in second reading?
Thank you. On block, sir, there are 2 regulations. If I can address those, sir. Regulation 1 amends paragraph 1 of the schedule to the Financial Services Ombudsman Jersey law, which requires the Minister to appoint members of the board to the board of the Office of the Financial Services Ombudsman. The amendment also takes the opportunity to correct a faulty cross-reference in paragraph 1, subparagraph 4 of the schedule, sir. Regulation 2 concerns citations and provides that the regulations come into force the day after they're made. Thank you, sir. I move the regulations.
Are they seconded for second reading?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in second reading? No member wishes to speak in second reading. Then I close the debate. Ask the referee to post a vote in the link. I open the voting and ask members to vote in second reading. Members have the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the referee to close the voting. Regulations have been adopted in second reading. 40 votes pour, 1 vote contre in the link, and 2 votes pour in the chat. Very well.
Contre, please, sir.
Yes, the vote contra was the Constable of Trinity.
Do you propose the matter in third reading, Minister?
Yes, sir. Can I propose the matter in the third reading, and in doing so just put on record a vote of thanks to the board, the entire board, sir, who have worked continuously through the pandemic. Thanks to Mr. Curran for agreeing to continue for 1 year, sir. This is a good example of Pan-Channel Island a cooperation, sir, and serves as a good example of how we can work together, sir. Thank you.
Very much. Are the regulations seconded for third reading?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading? No member wishes to speak in third reading. And I close the debate and ask the referee to post a, I beg upon the Connétable 1.
Thank you, sir. You were speaking quicker than I can type. Not that my typing abilities are much to write home to my mother about. I couldn't let the occasion pass without offering my words of praise to the Financial Services Ombudsman. In case members are any doubt, it is a valuable service provided to the financial services industry, not least in resolving and protecting consumers and finding a resolution to issues they may have with financial services providers. And having personally worked with them, I can attest to the fact that the job is done very effectively, very fairly, and they are very user-friendly. And I would like to add my words of praise to their efforts over the years, and hope that they have a long and successful future.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak in third reading? Call upon the Minister to respond.
Can I thank the Constable, sir, for his comments, which I thoroughly endorse, sir, and I move the proposition in the third reading.
Very well. Ask the referee to place a voting link in the Vote in the link. I open the voting and ask members to vote in the usual way. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the Secretary to close the voting. Regulations have been adopted in third reading, 43 votes for, no votes contra in the link, and 2 further votes for in the chat. Very well, we now come to the Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal appointment of side members, P164, lodged by the Minister for Social Security, and I ask the Secretary to read the citation.
States are asked to decide whether they have opinion in accordance with the Employment and Discrimination Tribunal Jersey Regulations 2014 to appoint the following persons as side members of the Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal, each for a period of 5 years from 25th of January 2021. Claire Bowes, side member employer. Scott Hollywood, side member employer. Lorraine Bennett, side member employee. Patricia Sakieska, side member employee. Sue Pallo, side member employee.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to propose the appointment of 5 new members to the Jersey Employment and Discrimination. Sorry, sir, I'm tripping over that word. Tribunal. Subject, obviously, to the approval of the States Assembly, the appointments will take effect from today. Members of the tribunal hear complaints made under the employment and discrimination laws, including claims of unfair dismissal, redundancy, and discrimination on grounds of race, age, sex, and disability. Recruitment for these posts took place in October 2020. We received good quality applications, and I accepted the recommendations of the recruitment panel. The Jersey Appointments Commission has confirmed that the process was conducted in accordance with its guidelines. I am satisfied that the proposed new members have the necessary skills and experience, and I am grateful to them for agreeing to take on these important responsibilities. Sir, I am pleased to propose the appointment of Claire Bowes, Scott Hollywood, Lorraine Bennett, Patricia Sakieska, and Sue Pallett as side members of the tribunal, and I ask members to support this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Right, is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Anyone wish to speak on the proposition? Nobody wishes to speak on the proposition. And I ask the Secretary to post a vote into the link. And I open the voting and ask members to vote on the proposition.
Okay, 41.
Well, if members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the Secretary to close the voting. Proposition has been adopted, 41 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions in the link, with the 3 further votes for noted in the chat. Very well. The next item is the amendment of the standing orders of the States of Jersey to provide for political parties, P166, lodged by Senator Mezek, and I ask the Secretary to read the citation.
States to decide whether of opinion that the standing orders of the States of Jersey should be amended to take into account that members of the States Assembly may choose to organise themselves within political parties, and to request the Privileges and Procedures Committee to investigate and bring forward the necessary amendments that are appropriate to facilitate this by the end of 2021.
Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. And after the previous debate on a change to standing orders, I hope that this can be a relatively simple debate, and hopefully because of how open this is and how I've specifically worded it to use the word appropriate. So it does leave some room for PPC to investigate these matters and only come forward with things that are deemed to be right and not just token gestures or something for the sake of it. And members will know that I lodged this very soon after Deputy Wickenden lodged his proposition, specifically so this could be seen as a more holistic approach to the issue that his proposition touched upon, which is a fair issue to highlight, that of the role of parties in the assemblies and what rights and responsibilities they should have, but to do so in that more holistic way that takes into account all of the other issues that weren't considered in his proposition that we may wish to take a view on. In that previous debate, though, some members spoke as if the full emergence of party politics in Jersey was imminent, or as if we're on the verge of having majority party government in our system, which, although I wish that was true, I should say that there is, of course, no guarantee of that whatsoever. A transition to party politics in Jersey can only happen if there are these two things. The first of that is people who are willing to take up the initiative to form other parties. And secondly, a public who are willing to vote for them. And there's no guarantee of either of those. So whether Jersey does move to a full party system, whether Jersey rejects the tiny party system that already exists entirely, or whether it wants to have some sort of hybrid system, is ultimately a matter for the public of Jersey to determine, and it's not the role of the Assembly or a majority of members of this Assembly, a simple majority of members of this Assembly, to determine one way or the other to either force party politics on the island, on islanders, by changing our institutions so they are unworkable without party politics, or vice versa, to prohibit the operation of parties that have been elected democratically. It's not our role to do either of those, but it is the case that at the previous two elections, enough members of the public wanted to be represented by at least one person who was in a political party to justify 5 of us getting elected. That was more than at the previous election, and who knows what the next election will hold to that. But those members of the public who did that knowingly have every right to expect that once their candidates are elected, that they be facilitated in the rules of the Assembly to be able to work according to the mandate that the public gave them by endorsing their election on the terms that their candidacy was offered. And there are things that we can look at. It is the case that the Commonwealth recommended benchmarks for democratic legislatures says that there should be in parliamentary rules some sort of facility to enable the formation of parliamentary party groups, and that their rights and responsibilities ought to be clearly stated in those rules. And we are clearly in breach of that right now, where there is no word at all in our standing orders that takes into account the fact that there are 10% of members that are affiliated with the party and who factor that into their work programme. It doesn't tell us what we can do because of that, and it doesn't tell us what we can't do, because it is right that our rules ought to outline the clear demarcation between when an elected states member is acting in accordance with their mandate to be in a party, or whether they're administering the party admin functions, which is clearly not a parliamentary duty, and there needs to be clear separations on those sorts of things. So what this proposition does is that it asks to add to the work programme that PPC is already doing, and they outline this in their comments to say that they're looking at some of the elections laws and the party's registration law in accordance with the recommendations that came from the CPA Election Observers Mission. And that's great, wholeheartedly support that, and I've been very pleased with the engagement we've had with PPC so far. But I'm saying to add to that the standing orders of the Assembly as well, so that what amount of a party system we have can be managed properly and democratically in a way that doesn't either advantage or disadvantage us, but allows us to fulfil our democratic mandate. So I hope that this can have support from all parts of the Assembly, irrespective of what your personal view of party politics is, whether you think it would be a bad thing for the government of Jersey, or whether you think it's an essential way forward, by providing something in standing orders to neutrally facilitate it. That then allows the public to have their way, whichever way they choose to express it. So that's the democratic way forward. That's the rationale for this proposition. I make the proposition and look forward to any comments members may make.
Very much, Senator. Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I now open the debate. Deputy Labby has indicated a desire to speak.
Thank you, sir. Just very briefly to say that PPC is happy to accept this proposition, as I think our comments paper makes clear. We've already been working with Senator Mesic on a number of these issues, and he's very hot on this sort of stuff, and we've been grateful to have him join our subcommittee occasionally, and we're progressing some, and we've asked the law draftsmen, some of whom have very great experience in redrafting this kind of legislation, to keep an eye out for where parties should be made provision for, and where they're not at the moment. And we're very content to continue this work. He's absolutely right. There is little or no provision for political parties, because there have been little or no political parties that have survived in living memory. In that respect, Reform Jersey has broken that mould, and it appears to be here to stay. So it is right that we take a look at our standing orders and the rules and regs with elections and the state's Jersey law to see that proper provision is made. The difficulty, the complexity comes with the amount of variables that there could be, and making provision for all those variables. But something positive that came out of Deputy Wickenden's debate is, of course, that perhaps one should legislate now for the possibility of one party gaining a overall majority in the Assembly. But there are variables. There is a complexity too with not disadvantaging independent members by making provision for party members, and vice versa. So, but we've started this work. We've started to put some stuff in the legislation that will be coming through, and we'll continue to do that with the Senator and anybody else who has anything to contribute on this. Our door is always open. So that's all I have to say. We're happy to work with the Senator and continue that process.
Thank you very much, Deputy Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. The history of political parties in Jersey has been a long one and very interesting, and it's never really happened, with the exception of perhaps Reform Jersey, who, and I'm sure Senator Mesic will correct me if I'm wrong, have probably been, in terms of staying power at least, the most successful political party we've had. I'm sure the senator will have researched way back into previous centuries. So that is a sign that perhaps the island is very slowly inching towards that type of system. I've always said, sir, that if the people of Jersey wanted political parties, we would have them. There would be no doubt, of course, in the correct way, as far as I'm concerned, to form a party is in the island itself, or in the country, if we can use that terminology. People form a party, they organise themselves, and then they put their members up for election. And Reform Jersey have done that, and of course I wish them continued success there, but not too much success, of course. Other members have tried in the past, and I mean, every assembly I've been a part of, there have been conversations behind the scenes between members to form alliances and parties, and of course our ministerial system does create a sort of a party where the government, although we don't have collective responsibility currently, that the government does tend to sort of act in a similar way to a party would. So, and of course, collective responsibility is probably essential in a successful party system. And where I've worked with politicians in different parts of the world, whether it be at a national level or a council level, sir, I have to say that quite often I see more challenge and more confrontation within the party sometimes than between the parties. So I'm not sure I'm a supporter of a party, sir. I prefer independent politics, and our system has been built around that. So I prefer team politics, and the beauty of our system is that we can all align on certain things and be unaligned on other things. And I think that's one of the very special things of the aspects of the States of Jersey. Of course, that also worked in the committee system, sir, which, although different, had many similar traits to those we see now, sir. Deputy Labby did touch on the complexity and variables, and of course we could almost have a book of standing orders purely to govern government parties. So I'm not quite sure how that would work. I think Deputy Wickendon's proposition was with a short but debate we needed to have, and I voted against it because I felt that what he was proposing wasn't necessarily wrong, but it did have to be part of a more coordinated approach, and maybe this is the answer. So I would like to hear from Senator Mezek, perhaps, if he has any ideas about what levels of complexity he's thinking about as we put together some standing orders which make allowances and create some processes and procedures for members of parties. And I'm not sure, sir, if there is any legislation relating to parties, sir, and their registration in the courts, and what standing that would give them, but obviously that's a separate issue. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Senator Deputy Taddeo.
Thank you, sir. Following on from Senator Farnham, I'll take a different angle to his view, and when I say this, it's only partially tongue-in-cheek. So he said that we haven't had party politics in recent years apart from Reform Jersey, but I would say that we haven't not had party politics since the new assembly of after the Second World War. Simply, we've had the same party in power ever since then, and that is the view of history that I've learnt and been taught, and that I believe to effectively be true, although it is perhaps slightly more nuanced than that, in the sense that in I think it was the 1948 election, the Jersey Progressive Party got elected pretty much unanimously, perhaps one seat not. They got a landslide victory, and they disbanded, and they've been in the closet ever since. And we're still waiting for the Jersey Progressive Party to come back out of the closet, and there is talk of that party perhaps doing so imminently, and even keeping the name, or calling themselves Progress Jersey in a tip of the hat to their former reactionary roots that came after the half-hearted reforms in the middle of the last century, sir. But that remains to be seen. The reason I welcome this is that there are changes that need to be made, and we need to think of not just this assembly, but what future assemblies might look like, and take, if you like, the Rawleyan position of being blind about where we might fit in that assembly at all, if at all. So we must put our any party allegiances aside and any hostilities that we might have even to the concept of political parties, and just accept that they may well be still in existence and there may well be more than one or two parties in existence, and ask how would the public in this assembly be best served and best deal with that kind of scenario. And there are a couple of things that I would like to see, just to put some meat on the bones and to give PPC some early indication about the kind of things that they need to be considering. It would seem to me that any party in this assembly should be able to put forwards a comments paper in their own right. And that could be on any number of issues. So it could be to do with a government proposal, it could be to do with a backbench proposition or a committee's papers. They should be able to do that in their own right. And on the basis of that, then they should, I think the corollary is that any member of the political party should be able to act as a rapporteur on any particular proposition or speech for that party. It would have the added benefit of actually not necessarily needing everybody to speak on that issue, and it wouldn't need a rule for that. It would just, I suspect, happen organically and naturally, that you would get an individual in the party specialising in different areas, and that would be the person who might be the go-to, the spokesperson, the minister or the shadow minister for a particular issue. And it also ties in with the new speech time limits that we've put in place. I don't agree with those, not because I like to speak longer than 15 minutes, although I may do that on occasion, but because I don't think it's democratic and it's unnecessary ultimately. But that said, we do have a 15-minute time limit in place, and I'm very uneasy about the rigid rules that have been put in place, the guidelines that were circulated, because when the 15-minute limit came in to force, we were sold it on a very much light touch, easy as you go basis that common sense would be applied. But that's of course not going to happen, and it probably never could have happened that way, because it would contradict the whole ethos of having the time limits in the first place. But it seems to me it shouldn't be as concrete as that. We know in advance who the respondent is to any one given proposition. And it seems to me you can have multiple main respondents who should be able to make more substantive speeches on any given issue. And that might be the case when you have your shadow ministers. So, for example, if an issue comes up around education, you could potentially have 2 or 3 individuals from different parties, as well as scrutiny chairs, who feel that they need to make the party position clear on any given issue. And I think it was only right that some kind of common sense approach is used and translated into standing orders. So, for example, if the Jersey Independence Party, let's call it, gets 5 seats in the Assembly in the future, and they want to speak on a particular issue for an hour, but of course they only want one person to do that, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't allow a party to be able to do that on a particular issue, because of course if those 5 individuals spoke for 15 minutes each, they would have an hour and a quarter anyway to expound their ideas on any particular issue. And I think we need to start thinking in those terms, and also in the terms that what role an opposition might have in our assembly in the future, because in the UK and elsewhere, certainly in the Commonwealth, the opposition is referred to as Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, and it's recognised that that sits alongside the scrutiny function or the select committee system, and that there's an honourable job to be done by an opposition in the public interest in upholding holding the government to account which is completely separate from what scrutiny would do. And that's why I'm pleased, incidentally, that the last proposition didn't succeed, because it could have created a scenario whereby, in fact, it was making scrutiny into an opposition. Because, of course, what happens if you get one party with all the seats? Then by our very own rules, under that scenario, you wouldn't be able to have any scrutiny at all, because all of the members would be from that party. A nonsense, of course, and the states did well to get to give that short shrift in its deliberations. I think there are other issues that need to be looked at, perhaps beyond this, in terms of party spending. We could have a scenario at the next elections. We know there'll be at least one party contesting. Reform Jersey will be contesting seats in that election, but there may be other parties. There may well be parties that contest all seats in all districts, and there are going to be implications for spending when it comes to that. I don't know what the spending limits will be, but presumably if you have a district of 5 candidates and you're fielding 5 candidates in that district and multiplying that across the island, you could have a party that is very well resourced and that is able to spend literally hundreds of thousands of pounds and still be within the limits of what they can legally spend, versus perhaps an individual independent candidate from a traditionally previously small district, now in a super constituency, or a new candidate who's not aligned to any party, who's going to have to contest against that. And I'm not saying that we should automatically make provisions for those independents, but these are the kind of thorny issues which will at least need some thought alongside the work that is being requested here in standing orders. So I do look forward to a non-prejudicial and open-minded approach from whoever is doing this piece of work on PPC, and wish them all the best with that, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm prompted to speak from the previous speaker. And that's purely because more and more I read of the proposition that's been put forward by Senator Mezek. Deputy Tallier referred to the relevance of the opposition with regards to particularly the UK, particularly with regards to the Westminster Parliament. Of course, we're not in that position. Machinery of government has been in place for what will be 16 years this year. And when it was brought in very much within the bones rather than the meat and bones, in terms of good governance, in terms of political offering to our community. So if we're going to move forward in terms of parties and the requirement for parties within our jurisdiction as an island and a self-governing crown dependency, I think it's important to refer to what actually the proposition is asking us to do. So I think the main question that I would ask of the proposer to this proposition, Senator Mezek, is he refers in his proposition that the standing orders of the States of Jersey should be amended to take into account that members of the States Assembly may choose to organise themselves within political parties. And then he goes on to say to request the Privileges and Procedures Committee to investigate and bring forward the necessary amendments that are appropriate to facilitate this by the end of 2021. So I'd like to understand from Senator Mezek, in terms of, there may not be many members who are elected in this current term who choose to organise themselves within political parties. We know there is a current political party, but what comes forward before the next state's election, May 2022, there may be other political parties that come forward that not necessarily combine those of us within the current States Assembly. So I'd like to understand from the proposer of this proposition what he's actually expecting to achieve or see through this proposition, and whether it's a case of having a forward-thinking expectation that we will have some form of political parties going into the future for Jersey, and therefore what premise or views he would seek with regards to Privileges and Procedures Committee to apply the investigative requirements he is seeking with this respect. But also, if this was not to be the case, what improvements would he see being made available in terms of amendments to the States Assembly to improve on where we are? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Another member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and call upon Senator Mesek to respond.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to those members who contributed to this debate. When Senator Farnham asked about the history of party politics in Jersey, I almost thought, great, that's an opportunity to talk for a couple of hours about a subject I'm thoroughly interested in, but I'm sure nobody would want to listen to all of that. I'm grateful to the chairman of PPC for his support for this. The proposition is open and I think provides for a constructive way forward that I'll do what's necessary from my part to support PPC in achieving it, and I'm pleased that they're happy to do that work alongside the rest of the work that they're doing. Deputy Tagier mentioned, well, he referred to potential complications with election expenses for future parties contesting elections, and that absolutely is a live issue and one which needs to be dealt with, because the current rules, as I know from experience, are not very helpful at all when trying to actually be transparent about your spending and how it's allocated. But that's not a standing orders issue, that's for the election expenses law, which PPC are looking at, and they can look at that in the same frame of mind that they may wish to look at this proposition. So that just seeks to be helpful there. Yes, Senator Farnham did describe Reform Jersey as being the most successful party in recent times, which is a title I'm absolutely happy to claim. It depends what we mean by recent times, though. It is the case that Jersey had party politics, quite strong party politics, in the immediate aftermath of the occupation, where there was what you could describe as a conservative political party called, for some reason, called the Progressive Party, and then there was a centre-left movement called the Jersey Democratic Movement, which was to a degree a coalition of other parties that were involved in that too. And it is the case that the Progressive Party existed for some time after those few elections, but it did eventually fizzle out. I think largely because the other party didn't pose that much of an electoral threat to it. So it's quite interesting that at the foundation of our post-war government and the reforms that came with that, they were actually built by an assembly where party politics was dominant, and many of the senior political figures from back in that day were very closely associated with that. And the obvious one there is Senator Stella Markov, who was a founder of the Progressive Party. But that's history, and this proposition is trying to be forward-looking. And Senator Farnham did ask for what sorts of things we might want to look at as part of this. I think first and foremost, what this ought to bring about is some sort of facility for the basic recognition of parliamentary party groups. I mentioned in the debate on Deputy Wickenson's proposition that one of the flaws with his proposition was that it referred to members of parties without actually determining what constitutes a member of a party, because there are no lists that are either registered in the Royal Court or provided to the States Assembly. So at the outset, it should find one way of allowing members of the Assembly to have it registered with the GREF, that we are a party, these are our members, and therefore if there are any rights or responsibilities that will then fall to members who are also members of parties, that it's clear who they actually apply to, and that may then go on to think about things like how states members' resources are being used. When I lived in London, there were regularly meetings that members of the public could attend, being hosted by MPs in Portcullis House, and many of those meetings were overtly political in nature, and many of those, certainly some of the ones that I went to, were party political in their nature. And so there's a question about whether it's right that facilities can be used for that sort of thing, and if it is okay, to what degree can it go on, and just provide clarity so those members know what they can and can't do, and there's no arguing it then or trying to get away with things that were appropriate. And then one day in the future, if it were the case that Jersey moved to a full party system where we fluctuated between either majority governments or coalition governments, and then would have parties in the Assembly who are not part of government, then we may well want to think about what would be appropriate in terms of managing who gets the non-government roles in that parliamentary setting, to ensure that they are able to carry that work out effectively. And it may well be the case that if there are cross-party committees, that you may want to have some sort of system for determining how parties are represented on those committees where there's an important perspective. So we've got the Privileges and Procedures Committee. It would strike me as sensible that if there are parties in the Assembly, that they should each have at least one member on that committee, just so that view can be transmitted there, but also be prevented from being a majority as well, because that would be undemocratic to have a takeover of a committee in that way. And so there's things like that that can be done. I don't know if what I've just said helps with Senator Valwa's question, because I can't predict the future of what may be the case with other parties in the future. Some seem to know more than me on that, and that may well turn out to be true, or it may well not. So I don't know how that will develop, but at least having a starting point that meant if they did suddenly appear on the platform and did get elected in great numbers, we wouldn't be caught completely off guard. And it may well be the case that we'd have to reevaluate rules and update them periodically, depending on how our future political system evolves. But we'd be in a better position than we are now, where there's simply nothing governing it whatsoever. And as I've always said, from Reform Jersey's perspective, we want to have clear rules that we can abide by, rather than us have to interpret or make them up ourselves, which is not a position we're comfortable with. So that's the basis for the proposition. I hope it moves us forward. And if it is accepted and the work goes ahead, then by the end of this year, I think we'll be in just a smarter position as an Assembly, just having cleaner rules for this and bringing us more in line with the CPA recommended benchmarks for democratic legislatures, which I hope all members would support that direction of travel. And so I ask for the appel, please, sir.
Thank you very much. I ask the greffier to place a point of clarification from Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. I appreciate you recognising that. I did make a particular point in asking the senator about what he meant about the States Assembly choosing to organise themselves within political parties. I recognise his argument around the standards in terms of the Commonwealth recommendation on benchmarks, but I don't believe that's been answered. So I'd appreciate an answer from the Senator with regards to his proposition.
Sure, I'll do my best. I think that choice of words reflects the fact that party membership should not ever be compulsory for members of the Assembly, and that if members appear in the Assembly after an election and are members of political parties, it's recognising that that was a choice for them to register as such, and in that choice endorsed by the public when they were elected. And I think I've kind of phrased it that way to recognise that there will be states members who will choose to do the opposite, and that's not less legitimate. I don't know if that clarifies that for the Senator, but it's about recognising that it's not compulsory, and members who will find themselves in that position will be there because that's what they've determined is how they want to work, and that will be facilitated rather than imposing a method of working on them that doesn't fit in with how they've chosen to fulfil their democratic mandate.
Well, the link had been posted. I hadn't opened the voting. That happens when I say the words I open the voting. But clearly, I open the voting now. I don't know if your vote has been counted. Yes, it appears to have been logged. So, Deputy Taddy, you don't need to vote again. Open the voting and ask members to vote. Are you able to say if Deputy Wards has been? No. I'm afraid, Deputy Ward, we can't indicate whether or not you voted or not, because we can't see anything. In any event, if members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, ask the greffier to close the voting. Proposition has been adopted, 41 votes pour, 1 vote contre in the link, and I count 4 votes pour in the chat. Well, we're asked for one.
The vote contra was the Constable Simple Art.
Well, the final item of public business is the Jersey Police Complaints Authority appointment of chair, P169, lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs. The main respondent is the chair of the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I ask the greffier to read the citation. Very well. Deputy Dublet, it wouldn't be normal if we have ongoing business to propose the adjournment before 5:30 in any event. And so we have 2 minutes now, and then if you want to afterwards, if you want to, this is the final item of business, but it's a matter for you if you want to propose it after that. Very well, Minister.
Thank you very much, sir. In making the proposition, I'd firstly like to place on record my thanks and that I'm sure of the Assembly to Mr. Howard Cooper, the retiring chairman of the authority for the conscientious, efficient and effective way he served the authority, first as a member and then as chairman since 2013, some 8 years. We really are extremely grateful to him. And we're delighted that after a robust selection process and a very, very strong field, I'm able to propose the election as chairman of Mrs. Janet Naylor, whose biography is included in the report, and we're very grateful to her and indeed the others who agreed to put their names forward for this post. I make the proposition, sir.
Second it, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you're on mute.
My words were falling on deaf ears. There was obviously a reason for that. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Although I have been advised that I'm not required to withdraw due to the fact that my partner is a police officer, I feel for absolute transparency I prefer to recuse myself from this debate and also from the voting, so I'll be withdrawing now. Thank you, sir.
Very well, Deputy. That's entirely a matter for you, and we note that's what you've done. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. Recognising the very good work of Ms. Cooper previously, I'd like to ask the Minister around the appointment of this particular member as to any conflicts or concerns that may be held with regards to any other work that they may be involved in. With regards to their independence and ensuring separation between complaints authority and therefore the work of government, ensuring that the role is respected in the way that it should be. Thank you, sir.
Well, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, my internet's dropping out, so I'm going to just put the microphone on. So the only thing I would mention regards this, and I have no knowledge regards the person who has been appointed, and I'm not questioning that, or I'm interested to see the answer to Senator Valwa's question. Is just the role of the Director General in the appointment of an independent panel member that overlooks complaints made for the police, and whether just the I don't know, I may be using the wrong word, so forgive me, and I ask the Minister forgive me for that, but the appropriateness of that given the overarching role that the new Director General has both in the police and other services, and whether there is an issue regards the supporting of the independence of this complaints authority of the police when the appointment is made by somebody who oversees the police force overall in the new target operating model. And I think it's a very important point that needs to be addressed. At this stage, I don't think it's something to call in for the panel because I don't know what will be achieved by that. But I think it's something important to answer in this debate before people vote. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak. Deputy Higgins, do you wish to speak?
Yes, sir. I wasn't that quick in getting the thing in the chat. Could I ask the Minister to explain how the police complaints body is independent when it's actually part of the police? I've forgotten the actual title. It's something to do with the police force law, and we have other bodies that are classed as independent, such as the Children's Commission and so on, where the states are responsible for overseeing it. But is there not a link between the police and the Police Complaints Authority? Perhaps you'll explain that, because that's one of the main criticisms I've had in the past.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. I'm not quite clear what Senator Valois was getting at. If she believes that Mrs. Naylor does have a conflict of interest, I mean, I think she should actually tell me what it might be. But certainly, as far as her employment is concerned, I'm not aware of any conflict whatsoever. To Deputy Ward, I think there may be a misunderstanding. The Director General of Justice and Home Affairs has no oversight of the police whatsoever. The accountable officer for the police is the Chief of Police, and not the Director General of the Justice and Home Affairs Department. And in any event, the whole process was overseen by the Appointments Commission, who...
I'm afraid that, Minister, I must interrupt you because a point of order has been raised by Senator Valois. What's your point of order on which you wish a ruling from the...
Sir, I'd just like to raise a point of order. The Minister is inferring that I was trying to suggest that there was something untoward. That
isn't a point of order. The most it could be would be a point of clarification of your speech.
So may I make the point of clarification, because that was not the
only if the Minister agrees to give way. You give way.
If the Minister agrees to give way, sir, then I'd like to make that point.
Minister, do you give way for a point of clarification?
Yes, I'm happy to give way to the Senator, sir.
Yes, very well. Senator, so what's your point of clarification? Are you clarifying your speech?
Yes, sir. I was not trying to make anything untoward in terms of the process or anything that's happened. I was just asking legitimate questions around conflicts of interests, and I was asking the Minister to clarify that. I would ask the Minister to relay the response in a way that does not reflect that I was trying to suggest something otherwise.
Well, that's all right, Senator. What you've done is clarify your speech. You're perfectly entitled to do that. You've clarified for the Assembly what you meant to convey in your speech, and it's not for the Minister to do anything. He's permitted that point of clarification. It may be useful now to deal with Deputy Ward's point of clarification. You give way to Deputy Ward, Minister.
Yes, of course, sir.
Thanks, sir. I'm sorry to interrupt. I know that's a bit difficult. So just a point of clarification on the comment that was made that the Director General has no direct oversight of day-to-day police forcing. That wasn't the point I was made, sir, and I want quite a clarification as to whether the Minister sees that in the end, during the chain of command in the new target operating model, the Director General does have influence over the police organisation, and I just wonder whether there is any issue regards that and the independence of this appointment. That was the point I'd make, sir. Thank you.
Well, I think if you're able to clarify that, Minister, and continue with your speech.
Yes, sir. The situation hasn't changed. So the Director General has no influence in the way that the Deputy was suggesting, sir.
Very well. Do you wish to continue with your speech, Minister?
Yeah, fine. And the other speaker, I think, was Deputy Higgins. As far as I recall, sir, the authority operates under its own law, not under the not under the police law, and it has what it does is to oversee, monitor, and supervise the investigation by the professional standards department of the police. And of complaints against the police and indeed the honorary police, and as far as I recall, so they do operate totally under their own law, not of the police law, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, in fact, the proposition actually, sorry, beg your pardon, sir. The proposition actually makes it clear it's a police complaints and discipline Jersey law, which is appropriate in this case, sir. I maintain the proposition.
Much. Ask the Secretary to put a link in the voting box, or in the chat, I should say. I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 40 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions in the link, and a further 2 votes for in the chat. That concludes public business for the meeting, and I invite the chair of PPC to propose the arrangements for the public business for future meetings.
So the arrangement for public business is the same as that which can be found on the consolidated order paper. I have no notifications of any changes.
Very well. Deputy of Grooveville, I think, wishes to raise a point in connection with future business.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to make a point that if states members are moving their propositions to a later date, a future date, and other members have amendments to the proposition, I think it would be courteous for them to inform those members, because unfortunately that has not been the case with the foreshore that was lodged by the Minister for Infrastructure. I have a not insubstantial amendment to that, and it would have been courteous, I feel, and I think as a rule of thumb that some recognition should be given to members that put amendments or have things on particular propositions that are being moved around the orders. Thank you very
much. Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Gardner, did you have something to say about the arrangements for future business?
Yes, sir. I would like to advise members that my proposition that just has been lodged, it's P221, I would defer to the 2nd of March sitting, so the members will have an opportunity to consider if need to submit the amendments.
Thank you very much, Deputy. That's very helpful. Very well. Do you have anything you wish to respond to on that? Sorry, Minister for Infrastructure.
Yes, thank you, sir. The reason it was delayed, sir, the amendment was made over the Christmas period, where quite a few officers were on leave, so it was impossible to get everything together that needed to be done. It was also brought up at the Council of Ministers, to which the Deputy of Grooveville is a member.
Very well. Deputy Pamplin, did you have something to say about the arrangements for future business?
Yes, sir, I believe it's relevant. Will the chair of PPC endeavour to have a conversation with the authorities of STAC, Dr. Muscat, as we're now meeting in 3 weeks' time, the probability of the trajectory of where we are on the island with the management of the pandemic, that we could entertain again getting the Assembly back in a hybrid system, as we also show the island that we are moving back to working within the confinements of the pandemic to show that the island's parliament can meet if it can. Thank you, sir.
Very well. Chair of PPC, is there anything you would wish to say in response to those?
Well, I have some sympathy, total sympathy with the constable, with the Deputy of Grooveville. Apologies. You know, manners cost nothing and take very little time to fire off an email to say that you're deferring or withdrawing when there are amendments, and that particular matter is one of great public interest. So I can only feel it would have been helpful if the Minister had done what the Deputy of Grooveville expects of him. We can't move until there is a change in the advice in terms of meeting the Assembly. But when the advice changes, we will change. That's all, sir.
Well, thank you very much. So you maintain your proposition for the arrangements of future business then. Senator Farnham, is there something to add about the arrangement for future business?
So I think I'm just checking, sir, that Senator Pallett's proposition P1 reference skate park at Lekeneve. I couldn't see it on the public business for the 9th, but I think I was looking at I wasn't looking at the consolidated order paper. I just wanted to make sure
it's definitely there. On there for the 9th. I can say that to you, Senator. Very well. May I take it the members approve the arrangement for public business as proposed by the chair of PPC? I will assume that to be a standing vote unless anyone indicates in the chat they would like a vote to be taken. If you wish a vote to be taken, could you please indicate now? Very well, I'll take that on a standing vote. The arrangement for future business has been approved and the Assembly stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 9th of February.